Imagine an architect standing in the quiet of a house he designed himself. The lines are clean, the spaces are deliberate, the light falls just so through vast panes of glass, illuminating polished concrete floors and minimalist furniture. From the outside, it is the very picture of success, a testament to a life built with precision and intent. It is a space celebrated in magazines, a fortress of modern tranquility. But inside, in the moments between the demands of the day, a different feeling arises. It is not loud, but a quiet, persistent hum. The hum of anxiety in a silent room, a sense of profound emptiness that the clean lines and open spaces cannot fill. He has acquired everything he was told would bring happiness. He has achieved the goals he set for himself, and yet there is a hollow echo where a sense of peace should be. This feeling, this subtle yet pervasive discontent, is not a personal failure. It is, perhaps, one of the defining conditions of our modern age. We live in a world that is louder, faster, and more demanding than ever before. We are constantly flooded with information, with images of what our lives should look like, with the relentless pressure to achieve more, to be more, to acquire more. We build beautiful houses, but we forget how to live inside them. We curate perfect images of our lives while feeling disconnected and lost within. We have become experts in shaping the world outside of us, yet we remain strangers to the landscape within our own minds. The problem is not the empty house. The problem is the feeling that the owner of the house is empty. We chase after happiness as if it were a destination, a prize to be won at the end of a long and stressful race. But what if we have been looking in the wrong direction? What if peace is not something to be built externally, but to be cultivated internally? For thousands of years, long before the noise of our current world, humanity has grappled with these same fundamental questions. There exists an ancient path, a different kind of blueprint, one that is not concerned with external structures, but with the architecture of the soul. This is an invitation to a journey to explore the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, not as a religion to be adopted, but as a profound science of the mind, a practical, methodical guide to understanding the nature of our own suffering and the clear path to its cessation. It is a journey to discover that true peace is not the absence of challenges, but the presence of an unshakable inner refuge, a quiet space within that we can build for ourselves, no matter the storms outside. The journey into the heart of this ancient wisdom begins not with a comforting promise, but with a profound and unflinching observation. It is called the first noble truth, and it is the foundation upon which all else is built. The word truth here does not mean a dogma to be believed, but a reality to be seen, an experience to be acknowledged in the very marrow of our bones. This first truth is the diagnosis of the human condition, and it is expressed in a single, vital Pali word, dukkha. Often, this word is translated into English simply as suffering, but this translation, while not entirely wrong, is deeply incomplete. It can conjure images only of immense tragedy, of acute pain, of heartbreaking loss. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and more pervasive. It touches every single one of us, every single day, even in moments that we might describe as happy. To truly understand dukkha is to understand the fundamental texture of our unenlightened experience. Imagine a wheel on a cart that is not perfectly centered on its axle. As it turns, there is a constant wobble, a subtle, ever-present bumpiness to the ride. Even on a smooth road, the journey is never quite smooth. This is dukkha. It is the background friction of existence, the low-grade hum of unsatisfactoriness, the feeling that something is always slightly off, slightly askew. It is the inherent vulnerability of a life that is dependent on conditions we cannot control. The Buddha, in his profound compassion and wisdom, identified 3 distinct layers or types of this universal experience. The first type is the most obvious, the one we all recognize instantly. It is called dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the raw, undeniable pain of life. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes, the chronic illness that limits your body, the sharp sting of a betrayal. It is the grief that hollows you out when a loved one dies, the anxiety that churns in your stomach before a difficult confrontation, the despair of failure, the fear that comes with old age, and the finality of our own mortality. This is the pain that makes us cry out, the suffering that is plain to see, written on the faces of people in hospitals, in war zones, in moments of profound loss. It requires no deep philosophy to understand this. It is simply the unavoidable pain of having a body, a mind, and a heart in a world full of sickness, decay, and separation. We spend a great deal of our energy trying to avoid this form of dukkha, building walls of security and comfort, seeking pleasure and distraction. But no matter how high we build the walls, the realities of life eventually find their way in. This is the first, most visceral layer of the human condition. The second type of dukkha is more subtle and perhaps more insidious because it hides within our moments of happiness. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the stress and anxiety that comes from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. Think of the joy of a perfect summer day, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the laughter of friends. It is beautiful, but a small part of our mind knows that the sun will set, the day will end, and this moment will become a memory. The happiness is tinged with the sadness of its own passing. Consider the excitement of buying a new car. For a few days or weeks, it brings a thrill, but soon the novelty wears off. It gets a scratch. A new, better model is released. The pleasure, which was so potent at first, fades, and we are left once again with a baseline feeling of wanting something more. This is true for all our pleasures. A delicious meal ends. A wonderful vacation is over. A promotion at work brings new responsibilities and new anxieties. The very nature of pleasure is that it is fleeting. The suffering here arises not from the pleasure itself, but from our clinging to it, our desperate desire to make it permanent in a world where nothing is. We try to grasp a sunbeam, only to find our hand empty. This creates a deep-seated tension, a fear of loss that can poison even our most joyful moments. We are constantly guarding our happiness, anxious about when it will disappear, and this very anxiety is a form of suffering. We are haunted by the impermanence of our own joy. The third type of dukkha is the deepest and most challenging to grasp. It is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the all-pervasive background dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of our being as a separate, conditioned self. It is that wobble in the axle. It is the fundamental stress of being a me in a world of other. It's the constant, low-level effort required to maintain our identity, to defend our opinions, to manage our reputation, to navigate the endless stream of choices, desires, and fears that make up our daily life. Even when there is no overt pain and no immediate pleasure is fading, there is still this underlying sense of incompleteness, of unease. It is the quiet desperation of a life lived in reaction to changing conditions. We feel happy when things go our way, and unhappy when they don't. Our inner peace is held hostage by external events. This fundamental precariousness, this lack of an ultimate, secure ground to stand on, is sankhara dukkha. It is the suffering inherent in being a composite being, a bundle of ever-changing physical and mental processes, mistaking itself for a solid, permanent entity. It is the exhaustion of constantly propping up an ego that is, by its very nature, unstable. This is the most profound level of the diagnosis, for it points to a dissatisfaction that cannot be fixed by changing our external circumstances, but only by changing our fundamental view of who we are. There is a powerful story that illustrates the journey into this first noble truth. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in a village and had one beloved son. One day, the child fell ill and died. Consumed by an unbearable grief, she could not accept his death. She picked up his small body and went from house to house, clutching him to her chest, desperately begging for medicine that could restore his life. Some people turned away from her, thinking she had lost her mind. Others pitied her, but could offer no help. Finally, a wise old man saw her profound suffering and told her, "I cannot give you medicine for your child, but I know a physician who can. Go to the Buddha." Kisa Gotami rushed to find the enlightened one, laid her son at his feet, and explained her plight. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one way to heal your sorrow. Go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." Hope surged in Kisa Gotami's heart. A single mustard seed seemed like such a simple task. She began going from door to door once again. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course, I will give you a mustard seed." But when Kisa Gotami asked if anyone in this house had ever died, the woman's face fell. "Oh, lady," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Just last year, I lost my husband." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family was happy to give her a seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a mother, another a brother, another a child. House after house, her desperate personal grief began to transform. She realized that her pain was not hers alone. The arrow of loss that had pierced her heart was an arrow that had pierced the heart of every person she met. Her sorrow was the sorrow of all humanity. Standing there, in the middle of the village, she finally understood. She was no longer an isolated soul, drowning in her own unique tragedy. She was part of the vast, shared experience of life and loss. With this profound realization, she returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a quiet, awakened mind. She had seen the first noble truth, not as a theory, but as a living reality. This is why the first noble truth is not a pessimistic doctrine. It is not a declaration that life is miserable and hopeless. It is the exact opposite. It is an act of supreme courage and compassion. The Buddha is like a master physician. A good doctor does not tell a sick patient, "Oh, everything is fine," just to make them feel better in the moment. A good doctor performs a thorough and honest examination and gives a clear diagnosis, even if the news is difficult to hear. Why? Because without an accurate diagnosis, there can be no cure. Without understanding the nature of the ailment, there can be no path to healing. To look at dukkha, to call it by its name, to see its presence in our moments of pain, our moments of joy, and our moments of quiet existence, is the first, essential step toward freedom. It is the end of denial. It is the moment we stop running from the fundamental reality of our lives, and instead turn to face it, with clarity and with kindness. It is the truth that shatters our isolation, reminding us, as Kisa Gotami discovered, that our deepest aches are the very things that connect us to everyone who has ever lived. By acknowledging this shared condition, we begin to cultivate compassion not only for ourselves, but for all beings caught in this same predicament. The journey has begun. We have looked at the symptom. We have diagnosed the condition. A brave and honest mind must now ask the next, most vital question. If this is the condition, what is its cause? Where does all this suffering, in all its forms, truly come from? After taking the courageous first step of looking directly at the universal condition of dukkha, the journey inward naturally leads to a critical question. If this subtle and pervasive dissatisfaction is the sickness, then what is its cause? A physician who only describes symptoms without understanding their origin cannot offer a cure. The genius and profound compassion of the Buddha's teaching is that it does not stop at the diagnosis. It proceeds to identify the root cause with surgical precision. This is the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, known in Pali as samudaya. The Buddha declared that the root of all our suffering, from the most acute agony to the faintest background hum of anxiety, arises from a single, powerful force within our own minds. This force is called tanha. The word tanha is often translated as craving or desire, but its essence is more akin to a deep and persistent thirst. It is not a gentle wishing, but a burning, compulsive drive, a deep-seated addiction. It is the relentless grasping of the mind for something to hold on to, the clinging to experiences, ideas, and sensations in a desperate attempt to feel satisfied and secure. This thirst is the engine that drives the unsteady wheel of dukkha. It is the fuel for the fire of our discontent. It is not an external enemy that attacks us, but an internal process that we continuously, and often unconsciously, feed. To understand how this thirst operates is to hold the key to our own liberation. The Buddha described this powerful force as having three distinct faces, three primary ways in which it manifests in our lives. The first and most recognizable face is kamatanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. Our modern world is a grand temple dedicated to the worship of kamatanha. It is the engine of consumerism, the promise whispered by every advertisement. It is the relentless pull to check our phones for the next notification, the next like, the next distracting video. It is the desire for a more delicious meal, a more exciting movie, a more luxurious vacation, a more attractive partner. It is the endless seeking of pleasure through the five senses. We chase these experiences believing that if we can just assemble the right combination of pleasant sensations, we will finally be happy. But this chase is a treadmill. The pleasure derived from any sensory experience is, by its very nature, fleeting. The delicious taste of the food vanishes the moment we swallow. The thrill of the new purchase fades. The beautiful song ends. And once the pleasure subsides, the thirst returns, often stronger than before, demanding a new and better experience to satisfy it. We become like ghosts with hungry mouths but tiny throats, constantly seeking but never truly nourished. This endless pursuit keeps us looking outside of ourselves for a happiness that can only be temporary, ensuring that the underlying feeling of lack, of dukkha, always remains. The second face of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhava tanha, the craving for being or existence. This is not just a craving for a particular object or experience. It is the craving to be something, to solidify our identity, to achieve a state of permanent, stable existence. It is the deep hunger for status, for reputation, for power, for recognition. It is the desire to be seen as smart, or successful, or virtuous, or special. It is the desperate clinging to our life story, our beliefs, our opinions, and the very idea of me and mine. This form of tanha is what drives ambition and the deep-seated fear of anonymity or failure. It is the force that makes us defend our opinions so fiercely in an argument, as if our very existence were at stake. We cling to life itself, terrified of non-existence, and we build elaborate castles of identity to protect ourselves from the truth of impermanence. But because everything is in flux, this craving for a solid, permanent self is a fight against reality itself. Our reputation can be destroyed in an instant. Our status can change. Our life, as we know it, will end. By clinging to a fixed idea of who we are, we set ourselves up for immense suffering when life, as it always does, changes. Bhavatanya is the architect of the ego, and the ego is a fortress built on sand, requiring constant, exhausting maintenance. The third face of craving is the shadow of the second. It is vibhavatanha, the craving for non-existence or annihilation. If kamatanha is the pull of I want, and bhavatanha is the clinging of I am, then vibhava tanha is the violent push of I don't want. It is the intense desire to get rid of something unpleasant. This can manifest in its most extreme form as suicidal thoughts, the desire to annihilate the self to escape unbearable pain. But it operates in our lives in countless, more subtle ways every day. It is the anger that flares up when someone insults, USA craving to annihilate their opinion. It is the desperate urge to escape a feeling of boredom or anxiety by distracting ourselves. It is the frustration we feel when stuck in traffic, a craving for the situation to not be as it is. It is the aversion to our own perceived flaws, the parts of our personality we wish we could just cut out and throw away. This form of craving is rooted in aversion and hatred. We believe that if we can just destroy, avoid, or push away the unpleasant aspects of our experience, we will find peace. But this pushing away is just as much a form of clinging as grasping is. It binds us just as tightly to the thing we are resisting. By constantly fighting against our reality, we exhaust ourselves and deepen the grooves of our own suffering. Aversion is not the opposite of craving. It is simply craving's other, angrier face. Both are expressions of a mind that cannot rest in the world as it is. To see this process in action, we can imagine a moth fluttering in the darkness of the night. In the distance, it sees the bright, warm, dancing light of a candle flame. To the moth, the flame is the most beautiful and alluring thing in existence. It promises everything: warmth, light, and an end to the darkness. Driven by an irresistible instinct, a powerful tanha, it flies towards the flame. It circles it, getting closer and closer, mesmerized by its dance, convinced that merging with this light will be the ultimate fulfillment. It does not see the nature of the flame. It does not understand that the very thing that promises such pleasure is also the very thing that will destroy it. In a final, desperate act of craving, the moth flies directly into the fire and is instantly consumed. We are that moth, and the objects of our craving are the flame. We are drawn to them, seeing only the pleasure and satisfaction they promise. We are blind to the suffering inherent in the act of clinging itself. We fly towards the promotion, the relationship, the sensory pleasure, believing it will save us, only to be burned by the inevitable disappointment, anxiety, and pain that comes from attaching our happiness to something so impermanent and outside of our control. The mechanism of tanha is like that of drinking salt water when you are thirsty. It seems like the logical thing to do. The water briefly wets your tongue and throat, giving a fleeting moment of what feels like relief. But its chemical nature is such that it actually dehydrates the body further, making the underlying thirst even more intense and agonizing. In the same way, fulfilling a craving provides a momentary spike of pleasure or relief, but it reinforces the underlying mental habit of seeking, strengthening the root of the thirst itself. This creates the endless cycle of dukkha. We feel a sense of lack. We crave something to fill it. we temporarily get it. The satisfaction fades, and the sense of lack returns, stronger than before. This is why a life based on fulfilling cravings can never lead to lasting peace. It is a self-perpetuating cycle of agitation. The problem is not the object of desire, but the thirst itself. It is crucial to understand that this teaching is not a moral condemnation of desire. It is a psychological insight. The Buddha is not saying we should become passionless rocks. A simple preference, like wanting to drink water when you are thirsty, is a natural part of being alive. The problem is not the initial wish, but the mental state that follows it. The difference between a simple desire and tanha is the element of clinging, of attachment, of making our inner peace conditional on an outer outcome. It's the difference between I would enjoy a walk in the park and I must have a walk in the park, and if I don't get it, my day is ruined. The second noble truth is an invitation to become a scientist of our own mind, to observe this process of thirst without judgment, when we see clearly, with mindful attention, how the act of craving itself plants the seed of future suffering. The obsessive grip of the craving naturally begins to loosen. We don't have to fight it or repress it. We simply see it for what it is. And this clear seeing is, in itself, liberating. So, the mystery is solved. Our suffering, our dukkha, is not a cruel punishment from an external source, nor is it a random accident. It has a specific, identifiable cause, and that cause is the internal fire of tanha. This is a profoundly hopeful and empowering realization. If the sickness had no cause, there could be no cure. If our suffering were just an inescapable feature of the universe, our situation would be truly hopeless. But because it arises from a specific, conditioned process, it means that the process can be interrupted. If the fire of suffering is fueled by craving, it implies that if the fuel is removed, the fire must go out. This leads us directly to the threshold of the most joyful and optimistic of the Four Noble Truths. It begs the ultimate question: is it truly possible to extinguish this fire? Is there a state of being that is free from this burning thirst? Is a lasting peace, a true end to suffering, actually attainable? Having journeyed through the first two truths, we may find ourselves in a somber place. We have looked unflinchingly at the diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of life, and we have pinpointed its origin in the relentless, burning thirst of tanha, our own inner craving. It is a stark and sober assessment. If the teaching ended here, it would indeed be a philosophy of pessimism. But this is precisely the point where the path turns, where the clouds part to reveal a stunning and hopeful sky. The first two truths diagnose the prison. The third shows us that the door is not locked. This is the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, known as nirodha. It is the most joyful, liberating, and pivotal message in the entire teaching. It is the Buddha's declaration that there is a definitive end to suffering. The logic of nirodha is simple, elegant, and profoundly rational. If you understand that a specific cause leads to a specific effect, then you also understand that the removal of that cause will lead to the removal of that effect. If a fire is kept alive by a steady supply of fuel, then when the fuel is no longer added, the fire must inevitably die down and go out. We have seen that the fire of our dukkha is fueled by the logs of tanha or craving, clinging, and grasping. Therefore, the third noble truth states with unshakable confidence that with the complete fading away and cessation of that very thirst, suffering ceases. With the relinquishing of craving comes the relinquishing of sorrow. This is not a matter of blind faith. It is a principle of cause and effect, as reliable as the laws of nature. This state of complete cessation, this ultimate freedom from the fire of suffering, is called nibbana in Pali, or nirvana in Sanskrit. Perhaps no spiritual term in history has been more misunderstood. than nirvana. For many, the word conjures vague and inaccurate images, leading to fear or confusion rather than inspiration. So before we can understand what nirvana is, we must first be clear about what it is not. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise, a beautiful garden where all our sensory desires are fulfilled for eternity. Such a place, however pleasant, would simply be a continuation of kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. It would still be a conditioned, impermanent state, and therefore, it would still contain the seeds of dukkha. Nirvana is also not the annihilation of the self, a complete obliteration into nothingness. This is a common fear, rooted in our deep-seated bhava tanha, the craving to exist. The teaching does not say that you cease to exist. It says that suffering ceases to exist. The delusion of a solid, separate, unchanging self is extinguished. But this is not a loss. It is the shedding of a heavy, painful burden. Finally, and most importantly, nirvana is not a cold, passionless, zombie-like state, devoid of all feeling. It is not the end of joy, love, or engagement with the world. It is the end of selfish, compulsive, and addictive emotions, the ones that cause pain to ourselves and others. So then, what is nirvana? The word itself literally means to extinguish or to blow out, like snuffing out a candle flame. What is being blown out are the three fires that fuel all our suffering, sometimes called the three poisons. The fire of greed, lobha, which is the essence of grasping and desire. The fire of hatred, dosa, which is the essence of aversion and pushing away. And the fire of delusion, moha, which is the fundamental ignorance of the way things truly are. When these fires are extinguished, the mind is no longer burned by them. It is no longer pulled and pushed by the frantic demands of craving. What remains is not a void, but the mind's own natural, luminous state. It is a state of profound and unshakable peace, a peace that does not depend on external conditions being pleasant. It is a state of ultimate freedom, freedom from fear, from anxiety, from the endless cycle of wanting and disappointment. It is a state of supreme mental health. When the distorting lenses of greed and hatred are removed, one sees reality with breathtaking clarity. And in that clarity, the heart's noblest qualities can shine forth unobstructed. Far from being a state without feeling, nirvana allows for the flourishing of boundless compassion, karuna, unconditional loving kindness, metta, and a deep, empathetic joy, mudita, for all beings, because there is no longer a small, selfish I standing in the way. There is a simple yet profound story that perfectly illustrates the nature of this cessation. Imagine a person who is holding a piece of burning charcoal in the palm of their hand. The pain is excruciating. Their hand is clenched tightly around the coal, and their mind is a storm of suffering. They might cry out, "This coal is causing me so much pain. Life is agony." They might blame the person who gave them the coal, or curse the world for creating such hot things. They might even try to find a way to make the coal less hot while still clutching it, perhaps by dipping their hand in water, only to find the steam burns them even more. All of their focus is on the coal, the external object they identify as the source of their pain. But all of this thinking is misguided. The suffering does not fundamentally come from the coal. It comes from the act of grasping it. The problem is the clenched fist. The solution, then, is not to destroy the coal or change its nature. The solution is simply to open the hand. The moment the fist is unclenched, the coal drops, and the pain of being burned ceases instantly. The relief is immediate and complete. That release, that letting go, is nirodha. The hot coal can be anything, a painful memory we keep replaying, a grudge we refuse to let go of, a person we desperately want to control, an object we crave, or a status we cling to. We think our suffering comes from the external object, but it comes from our mental clenching, our tanha. Nirvana is the wisdom to see this, and the courage to finally, simply, open our hand. The peace that follows is not something we have to create or build. It is the natural state that is revealed when the grasping stops. Crucially, this freedom is not some far-off promise only attainable after death. The Buddha declared that nirvana can be experienced in this very life, right here and now. The complete and final nibbana is the ultimate goal, but we can experience little nibbanas, momentary tastes of that freedom, every single day. Every time you feel a surge of anger and, through mindfulness, you choose not to act on it, allowing it to dissolve without leaving a trace that is a taste of nirvana. Every time you feel a strong craving for something, and you are able to simply observe the craving without being controlled by it, that is a taste of nirvana. Every selfless act of kindness, every moment of genuine presence where the chattering mind falls silent, every instance where you let go of a long-held resentment in these moments, you are stepping out of the fire. You are opening your hand. This makes the path deeply practical and encouraging. The goal is not a mythical destination in the distant future. It is a quality of peace that we can cultivate and touch in the midst of our ordinary lives. The third noble truth, therefore, stands as a radiant beacon of hope. It transforms the entire landscape of the spiritual journey. It tells us that our condition is not terminal. We are not fundamentally flawed or doomed to suffer. Our suffering is caused by a specific, curable condition, the habit of craving. And because it is a habit, it can be undone. A state of profound peace, freedom, and wisdom is not only possible, it is our birthright. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer obscured by the smoke of the three poisons. A great weight is lifted with this realization. There is a way out of the prison. We have seen the diagnosis. We have understood the cause. And we have now been given the prognosis. A full recovery is possible. The heart, now filled with this genuine and intelligent hope, naturally asks the final, most important question. If this state of nirodha, this nirvana, is real and attainable, what is the prescription? What is the specific, step-by-step treatment plan that will lead me from the burning fire of suffering to the cool, peaceful shore of liberation? What, exactly, is the path I must walk? We stand now at the threshold of the final, most practical and empowering of the Four Noble Truths. We have faced the profound diagnosis of dukkha. We have identified its root cause in the burning thirst of tanha, and we have been shown the luminous hope of nirodha, the truth that a complete cessation of suffering is possible. A heart filled with this understanding naturally asks the most vital question of all: how? How do I walk from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace? What is the actual, tangible path that leads from the clenched fist of craving to the open hand of release? The answer to this question is the Buddha's ultimate gift to humanity. It is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path leading to the end of suffering. It is the detailed prescription, the step-by-step blueprint for liberation, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, or in Pali, Arya Atatangika Magga. Before we explore the 8 components of this path, it is essential to understand the profound principle upon which it is built, the principle of the middle way. The Buddha did not arrive at this teaching through abstract theory, but through his own lived experience. He had lived at both extremes of the human condition. As a prince, he lived a life of ultimate sensual indulgence, surrounded by every imaginable pleasure, shielded from every sight of pain. He had access to the finest foods, music, and comforts, a life dedicated to the pursuit of happiness through the senses. Yet, he found it empty, a gilded cage that could not touch the underlying current of dukkha. Leaving his palace, he then pursued the opposite extreme. He became a wandering ascetic, practicing severe self-mortification. He starved his body until his ribs showed. He held his breath until his head throbbed with pain. He slept on beds of thorns, believing that by punishing the body and denying all pleasure, he could purify the mind. But after 6 long years of this grueling practice, he was no closer to liberation. He was merely exhausted, his body broken, and his mind still unfreed. It was in this moment of near-death clarity that he realized the truth. Neither the path of hedonistic indulgence nor the path of self-torture could lead to awakening. Both were dead ends. True liberation, he saw, lay in a balanced, intelligent, and sustainable approach, a path that avoided these two extremes. He called this the middle way. There is a story of a god appearing to one of the Buddha's monks, a musician named Sona, who was practicing with such ferocious, painful intensity that he was about to give up. The god asked him, "Sona, you were once a skilled lute player. Tell me, what happens if the string of the lute is tuned too tightly?" Sona replied, "It will snap. And what happens if the string is too loose? It will not make a sound. And what if it is tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose? Then," Sona said, "it will produce a beautiful and harmonious sound." The god replied, "So it is with the spiritual path. The noble Eightfold path is this perfectly tuned instrument. It is a path of mindful, balanced cultivation, not one of violent struggle or lazy complacency. It is this principle of the middle way that permeates every one of its 8 factors. When we hear the term Eightfold path, we might imagine a linear sequence of 8 steps, a ladder we must climb one rung at a time, but this is not the correct way to view it. The 8 factors of the path are not sequential, they are interwoven and are to be cultivated simultaneously. Imagine a strong cable, the kind that can support a great weight. That cable is not a single thread. It is woven from many individual strands. Each strand contributes its own strength, and together they create something far more resilient and powerful than any single strand could be on its own. The Eightfold path is like this cable. Each of the 8 factors supports and deepens all the others. They work in synergy, creating a holistic transformation of our entire being. To make this comprehensive path easier to understand, it is traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings. This is the fundamental architecture of the path, the way the 8 strands are organized. The first is the training in wisdom, or panya. This is the cognitive foundation of the path, the part that deals with our understanding and our intention. It is the compass that sets our direction. Without wisdom, any effort we make could be misguided. This training in wisdom consists of the first 2 path factors, right view and right intention. The second is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This is the practical, behavioral dimension of the path. It is how we manifest our inner wisdom in our outer actions, particularly in our interactions with others. It's about living in a way that causes no harm to ourselves or others, thereby creating the calm and peaceful external environment necessary for deep inner work. A mind agitated by guilt or conflict cannot find peace. This training in ethical conduct comprises the next 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The third and final training is in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the contemplative heart of the path, the direct training of the mind itself. It is the inner laboratory where we develop the mental muscles of focus, awareness, and tranquility. This is where we learn to work directly with the states of mind that cause suffering, transforming them from the inside out. This training in mental discipline is made up of the final 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So, let us now look briefly at the 8 strands that form this beautiful and powerful cable of liberation. The training in wisdom begins with 1. Right view. This is the starting point and the guiding light for the entire journey. It means seeing the world and ourselves clearly as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It is the direct understanding of the 4 noble truths, the nature of impermanence, and the law of cause and effect, karma. Wisdom continues with 2. Right intention. Once our view is clear, we must align our intentions with that view. This means consciously cultivating thoughts of letting go, of goodwill and loving kindness, and of harmlessness, while actively abandoning thoughts of greed, hatred, and cruelty. Our intention is the rudder that steers our mind. The training in ethical conduct begins with 3. Right speech. This is the commitment to use our words to heal, not to harm. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that distracts the mind. Ethical conduct is embodied in 4. Right action. This involves aligning our physical actions with our compassionate intentions. It means refraining from killing or harming any living being, from taking what is not freely given, and from sexual misconduct or exploitation. Ethical conduct extends to our work in 5. Right livelihood. This is the practice of earning a living in a way that is honorable, peaceful, and does not cause harm to others. It means avoiding professions based on deception, exploitation, or dealing in weapons, poisons, or intoxicants. The training in mental discipline starts with 6. Right effort. This is the balanced and joyful energy we bring to the path. It is the conscious effort to prevent and abandon unwholesome states of mind, and to cultivate and maintain wholesome, positive states of mind, like a skillful gardener tending to their garden. Mental discipline is powered by 7. Right mindfulness. This is the heart of the meditative practice. It is the capacity to be fully present with our experience in the here and now, observing our body, our feelings, our thoughts, and the world around us with balanced, non-judgmental awareness. Finally, mental discipline culminates in 8. Right concentration. As mindfulness becomes stable and effort becomes balanced, the mind develops the ability to unify itself, to rest its full attention on a single object without distraction. This state of deep calm and focus, or samadhi, provides the power and clarity needed to penetrate the deepest truths of existence. This is the noble Eightfold path. It is a complete and holistic design for living. It is not a set of rigid commandments, but a path of cultivation, a journey of personal discovery and transformation to be walked, not just believed in. It is a path that addresses every aspect of our lives, our thoughts, our words, our actions, our work, and the inner workings of our own hearts. It is the Buddha's compassionate and practical answer to the question of how to end suffering. We now have the map laid out before us in its entirety. Our journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and on this path, that first step is to ensure our compass is pointing true. We must begin, therefore, by diving deeply into the foundation of all that follows, the cultivation of wisdom, starting with the first and most crucial factor, right view. If the noble Eightfold path is the ship that carries us from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace, then right view is its compass and its rudder. It is placed first among the 8 factors for a simple and profound reason. Without it, the entire journey is directionless. All the effort in the world is useless if we are heading in the wrong direction. Right effort with a wrong view can lead to fanaticism. Right concentration with a wrong view can lead to delusion. Right view, or samadhi in Pali, is the guiding intelligence that illuminates the entire path. ensuring that every step we take, every ounce of energy we expend, moves us closer to liberation, not further away from it. It is the bedrock upon which a life of wisdom is built. It is essential to understand what the word view means in this context. In our modern language, a view is often synonymous with an opinion, a personal belief, or a subjective perspective that we hold in opposition to other views. We speak of political views, religious views, or views on art. But right view is the very opposite of this. It is not about adopting a new set of beliefs or dogmas to cling to. In fact, the practice of the path is largely about letting go of all our cherished opinions and theories and learning to see things directly as they truly are, without the filter of our preconceived notions. The Buddha was not interested in what people believed. He was interested in what they could see for themselves. He famously encouraged a spirit of noble inquiry, encapsulated in the Pali phrase ehipassiko, which means come and see. This is an invitation, not a command. It frames the path not as a religion to be accepted on faith, but as a verifiable science of the mind, a hypothesis about suffering and its end that each one of us must test and confirm through our own direct experience. Wrong views are the prison bars of the mind. Right view is the key that unlocks the door. Right view can be understood as having two levels: a conceptual level, which we can call the map, and an experiential level, which is the direct seeing of the territory itself. We must begin with the map. A conceptual understanding of right view provides the necessary framework to guide our practice. This initial framework has two primary components. The first is a clear understanding of the Four Noble Truths. To have right view means to recognize the presence of dukkha in our lives, to see how it is caused by our own tanha or craving, to understand that its cessation, nirodha, is possible, and to accept that the Noble Eightfold Path is the way to achieve that cessation. This framework becomes the new operating system for our mind. When a difficult situation arises, instead of reacting with blind anger or despair, a mind equipped with right view frames the experience. This is dukkha. Where is the craving here that is fueling this suffering? Is it possible to let go of that craving? What part of the Eightfold Path can I apply right now? This transforms life from a series of random, chaotic events into a coherent field of practice. The second component of this conceptual map is an understanding of the law of karma, or karma. This is the principle of ethical cause and effect. It states that our intentional actions, the choices we make with our body, our speech, and our mind have consequences. Actions rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion, unwholesome actions, are the seeds that will ripen into future suffering. Actions rooted in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, wholesome actions, are the seeds that will ripen into future happiness and peace. It is crucial to understand that karma is not fate or divine punishment. It is a natural law, like gravity. It places full responsibility for our lives directly in our own hands. We are not the victims of a capricious universe. We are the heirs of our own actions. This understanding destroys the paralyzing wrong views of nihilism, the belief that our actions don't matter, and fatalism, the belief that everything is predetermined. Right view empowers us by showing that we have the power to change our lives by changing our intentions right here and now. There is a classic parable that beautifully illustrates the difference between our ordinary, fragmented view and the holistic clarity of right view. The story tells of a king who brought an elephant into his courtyard and asked a group of men who were born blind to describe it. The first man touched the elephant's leg and declared, "An elephant is like a mighty pillar." The second man got hold of the tail and said, "No, you are wrong. An elephant is like a rope." A third touched the trunk and announced, "You are both mistaken. An elephant is like a thick, flexible pipe." Another felt the ear and was convinced an elephant was like a large, leathery fan. Another touched its hard side and described it as a solid wall. An argument broke out, with each man clinging to his own partial experience, absolutely certain that he was right and all the others were wrong. Our ordinary, unenlightened mind is like one of these blind men. We grasp onto a single aspect of reality, a pleasant feeling, a painful thought, our physical body, and we proclaim, "This is me, this is mine, this is what is real." We mistake a tiny, conditioned part for the whole, and we argue and fight to defend our limited view. Right view is like the dawn of sight. It is the ability to step back and see the entire elephant, to understand how the leg, the tail, the trunk, and the ears are all interconnected parts of a much larger, interdependent reality. This leads us to the deeper, experiential level of right view. The map is essential, but its only purpose is to guide us as we explore the territory of our own experience through the practice of mindfulness and meditation. Through this direct observation, the conceptual understanding of the truth deepens into a transformative, liberating insight. This insight has three characteristics, known as the three marks of existence. The first is anicca, or impermanence. Through sustained observation, we begin to see with undeniable clarity that everything is in a constant state of flux. Our thoughts arise and vanish like bubbles. Our emotions crest and fall like waves. Our physical sensations are a constantly shifting river of energy. Even our body is changing from moment to moment. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Seeing this is not a cause for sadness, but for liberation. It teaches us the futility of clinging. Why grasp so tightly to something that is, by its very nature, slipping through our fingers? The second mark, which arises from the first, is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. When we deeply see the universal nature of impermanence, we understand why basing our happiness on any conditioned thing is doomed to fail. Because every pleasure fades, every possession can be lost, and every relationship changes, any happiness that depends on them will be unstable. The suffering comes not from the things themselves, but from our unrealistic demand that they be permanent and stable sources of satisfaction. The experiential insight into dukkha is the seeing of this flawed strategy in real time. The third and most profound mark of existence is anatta, or not self. This is the pinnacle of right view and the insight that cuts the root of suffering. As we observe the stream of our experience, the sights, sounds, feelings, and thoughts, we begin to look for the I who is having the experience. We look for the permanent, independent owner of the thoughts, the unchanging CEO of the mind-body complex. And no matter how closely we look, we cannot find one. What we find instead is an impersonal, interdependent process. We see that a thought is just a thought. A feeling is just a feeling. There is no little me behind them, authoring them. The sense of being a solid, separate self is revealed to be a mental construction, a story the mind tells itself. This does not mean we cease to exist. It means we realize we exist not as a static noun, but as a dynamic verb. We are a process, a flowing river of interconnected phenomena. Realizing this directly is profoundly freeing. If there is no fixed, separate self to defend, who is there to be insulted? If there is no permanent self to aggrandize, what is the basis for pride? If there is no solid self to lose, what is there to fear in death? The delusion of the self is the source of our deepest clinging and aversion, and the insight of anatta is the sword of wisdom that cuts it down. Right view, therefore, is the ultimate antidote to delusion. It systematically replaces our distorted, self-centered, and fragmented picture of the world with one that is clear, compassionate, and whole. It is both the beginning of the path and its final fruition. We start with a conceptual map, the borrowed light of the Buddha's teachings. This map inspires us with the confidence to begin the journey as we walk the path, especially through the cultivation of mindfulness and concentration. This borrowed light ignites our own lamp of wisdom. The concepts become living, breathing insights. The map dissolves into the territory. Having now established this clear and accurate view of reality, having oriented our compass to the true north of liberation, the path forward becomes clear. A correct understanding of the landscape naturally gives rise to the question of how we should move through it. What is the spirit, the motivation, the resolve we must now cultivate to align our inner world with this newfound clarity? This leads us directly to the second factor of the noble Eightfold Path, the inseparable companion of right view, the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the clear map that shows us the nature of reality and the destination of peace, then right intention is the heart's resolve to undertake the journey. It is the conscious and deliberate act of turning the ship's wheel to align with the compass. Without right intention, right view remains a sterile, intellectual understanding, a beautiful map that is never used. Right intention, or samma sanankappa, breathes life into our understanding, transforming it from a passive observation into an active, compassionate force for change. It is the quality of our will, the purity of our motivation, the deep and silent why that fuels every thought, word, and deed. It is the crucial bridge that connects what we see with what we do. Our minds are like a constantly flowing river, and our thoughts are the currents within it. If left to its own devices, the river is fed by the countless small streams of our conditioning goal, past habits, our cultural influences, our instinctual reactions. These streams often carry the pollutants of greed, aversion, and confusion, muddying the entire river of our consciousness. Many people believe that thoughts are harmless, private events, but this is a profound misunderstanding. Every action we have ever performed and every word we have ever spoken was first born as a thought, an intention. A fleeting thought of irritation, if fed and nurtured, can grow into a torrent of anger. A small seed of desire can blossom into a consuming obsession. Right intention is the practice of becoming the compassionate steward of this inner river. It is the upstream work. Instead of frantically trying to clean up the pollution downstream at the level of our regrettable words and harmful actions, we go to the very source. We learn to purify the currents of thought before they can gather momentum and spill out into the world. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, divided right intention into three essential aspects. Each involves a turning away from an unwholesome motivation and a turning towards its wholesome, liberating counterpart. They form the threefold commitment of a heart oriented towards wisdom. The first is the intention of renunciation, or nekama. This is the direct antidote to the first face of craving, kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. The word renunciation can sound severe, conjuring images of grim-faced ascetics denying themselves all joy. But this is a misunderstanding. The intention of renunciation is not born from self-hatred, but from wisdom and self-compassion. It is the gentle but firm intention to let go. It arises from seeing clearly the burden of constant wanting. It is the recognition that a life spent chasing the next pleasure, the next acquisition, the next fleeting high, is an exhausting and stressful existence. It is like carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks, believing the weight is precious. Renunciation is the wisdom to see the rocks for what they are just. Heavy rock sand, the willingness to set the backpack down. It is the turning away from complexity and towards simplicity. In our modern lives, this intention might manifest as the desire to spend less time scrolling through social media and more time in quiet reflection, the choice to value meaningful experiences over material possessions, or the simple recognition that true contentment does not come from getting more, but from needing less. It is the serene resolve to untangle ourselves from the addiction to worldly things, not because they are evil, but because we desire a deeper and more stable form of peace that they can never provide. The second is the intention of goodwill, or abhyapada. This is the radiant antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, and hatred vyapada. Goodwill is more than just the absence of negative feelings. It is the active, deliberate cultivation of warmth, friendliness, and loving kindness, or metta, towards all living beings without exception. The mind rooted in ill will is always in a state of conflict. It sees threats, enemies, and annoyances everywhere. It replays old grievances, plots revenge, and marinates in resentment. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The intention of goodwill is the decision to drop the hot coal. It is the practice of meeting all beings, including ourselves, with a heart of kindness. When a thought of irritation towards a colleague arises, we recognize it and gently replace it with a wish for their well-being. When we feel resentment towards someone who has hurt us, we work towards the intention of forgiveness, understanding that this is a gift we give to ourselves. This practice radically changes our relationship with the world. Instead of a battleground of competing egos, the world begins to appear as a network of interconnected beings, all of whom, just like us, wish to be happy and free from suffering. The intention of goodwill is the resolve to be a source of peace, not conflict, in that network. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the profound antidote to the intention of cruelty and violence, vihisa. While it is closely related to goodwill, harmlessness emphasizes the compassionate response to suffering. It is the deep and unwavering commitment not to cause harm, physically or mentally, to any living creature, from the smallest insect to the most challenging human being. This is the foundation of true compassion, or karuna. The intention of cruelty can be obvious, like the desire to physically hurt someone, but it can also be subtle. It can be the sharp sting of a sarcastic comment, the malicious pleasure of gossip, the coldness of indifference to another's pain, or even the subtle enjoyment we might feel at a rival's misfortune. The intention of harmlessness is the vow to abstain from all of this. It is the resolve to protect life, not to destroy it, to soothe pain, not to inflict it. It requires us to be mindful of the consequences of our actions, to consider how our choices might impact the well-being of others. It is the guiding principle that asks, will this thought, this word, or this action lead to the benefit and happiness of myself and others, or will it lead to harm and suffering? There is a timeless story that wonderfully captures the essence of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, "A great fight is going on inside me. It is a fight between two wolves. One wolf is darkness and despair. It is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, resentment, and ego. The other wolf is light and hope. It is joy, peace, love, humility, kindness, compassion, and faith." The grandchild looks up and asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The elder smiles and replies simply, "The one you feed." Right intention is the conscious, moment-by-moment practice of choosing which wolf to feed. Every time we dwell on a past hurt, we are feeding the wolf of resentment. Every time we compare ourselves to others on social media, we are feeding the wolf of envy. Every time we lash out in anger, we are feeding that wolf. Conversely, every time we consciously generate a thought of gratitude, we are feeding the wolf of joy. Every time we pause before speaking and choose a kinder word, we are feeding the wolf of compassion. Every time we let go of a desire that is causing us stress, we are feeding the wolf of peace. Our mind is a sacred battleground, and our intention is the deciding factor. We can also think of the mind as a garden. Due to the seeds of our past conditioning, weeds of greed, hatred, and delusion will inevitably sprout. If the garden is left untended, these weeds will quickly overrun it, choking out all the light and life. Right intention is the art and practice of wise gardening. With mindfulness as our tool, we learn to recognize a weed the moment it appears. We see the thought of jealousy and label it. Ah, this is a weed. We don't have to violently rip it out of the ground, which would only disturb the soil and agitate the mind. We simply withdraw our energy from it. We stop watering it with our attention. Then, we deliberately plant a flower in its place. Where the weed of jealousy was, we can plant the flower of sympathetic joy, consciously rejoicing in another's good fortune. Where the weed of anger was, we plant the flower of loving kindness. Over time, as we continue this patient, gentle work, our inner garden becomes a place of beauty, fragrance, and nourishment. The flowers flourish, and the weeds find less and less fertile ground in which to grow. Right intention, then, is the active, creative force on the spiritual path. It is the heart's response to the clarity of right view. It ensures that our journey is not a selfish project for personal gain, but a compassionate unfolding for the benefit of all. It purifies our motivation, turning it away from the narrow confines of the ego and towards the boundless horizons of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. With our view clarified and our intention purified, the inner work is set on a firm foundation. But this inner transformation cannot remain locked away inside us. It must now find its voice and its form in the world. The purified river of our mind must now flow outwards. This leads us from the training in wisdom to the training in ethical conduct, where our enlightened intentions begin to shape our most basic and powerful way of interacting with the world, our speech. As our inner landscape begins to clear through the cultivation of right view and right intention, the path of transformation naturally moves outwards. The wisdom we are cultivating cannot remain an internal, private affair. It must find expression in our lives. It must begin to shape how we interact with the world. The first, most immediate, and most powerful way we connect with others is through our words. A single word can start a war or inspire a generation. It can shatter a heart or it can heal one. Our speech is a constant stream flowing from the source of our mind out into the world, and like a river, it can carry nourishing, life-giving water, or it can carry toxic pollutants. Right speech, or samavacha, is the second factor of the wisdom group, and the first factor in the training of ethical conduct, or sila. It is the art and practice of making our speech a tool for healing, harmony, and truth, rather than a weapon of suffering. The practice of right speech is traditionally and most clearly understood through 4 principles, framed as 4 types of wrong speech that we commit to abandoning. These 4 principles act like protective fences around the sacred ground of our communication, ensuring that what comes from us is clean and beneficial. The first fence is the commitment to abstain from false speech, musavada. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies. It means committing ourselves to the truth. But this principle goes much deeper than merely avoiding outright falsehoods. It includes the subtle forms of dishonesty we so often engage in to manage our image. It means abstaining from exaggeration to make our stories more impressive, from understatement to avoid responsibility, from making promises we don't intend to keep, and from the deceptive silence that allows others to believe something that isn't true. To practice this aspect of right speech, is to commit to becoming a person of unshakable integrity, someone whose words can be completely trusted. This is not always easy. It requires the courage to admit when we are wrong, to be vulnerable, and to face the consequences of the truth. But the reward is immense. When we stop expending the huge amount of mental energy required to maintain a web of small deceptions, our mind becomes calm and clear. We develop a powerful sense of self-respect, and we create a foundation of trust in our relationships that is priceless. The second fence is the commitment to abstain from slanderous or divisive speech, pisunaya vachaya. This is the practice of not using our words to create enmity and discord between people. Its most common form is gossip. It is so tempting to engage in gossip, to share a juicy story about someone who isn't present. It can create a false sense of intimacy with the person we are talking to, or make us feel superior to the person we are talking about. But this is a poison. It destroys reputations, betrays trust, and sows seeds of suspicion and conflict. Divisive speech also includes backbiting and carrying tales telling one person what another has said about them in order to stir up trouble. The practice of right speech invites us to become a force for harmony. Instead of speaking ill of others behind their back, we either speak of their good qualities or we remain silent. When we hear conflict, our intention is not to fuel the fire by taking sides or spreading rumors, but to be a force for reconciliation and understanding. It means becoming a safe harbor, a person others know they can trust, someone who will not use their words to tear others down. The third fence is the commitment to abstain from harsh or abusive speech, pharisaya vakaya. Words can be weapons, and they can leave wounds that are deeper and last longer than any physical injury. Harsh speech includes the obvious forms like yelling, cursing, insults, and threats, but it also includes the more subtle forms of verbal violence. Biting sarcasm that is intended to wound, backhanded compliments, a condescending or belittling tone, and cruel, unconstructive criticism. These are the verbal expressions of anger, frustration, and ill will. They are attempts to assert power by making another person feel small. To practice this aspect of right speech is to make a vow of gentleness. It means learning to communicate our needs, our disagreements, and even our frustrations in a way that is firm but kind, clear but compassionate. It requires us to pause, especially when we are angry, and to choose words that are intended to resolve a situation, not to win a battle. It is the practice of softening our tone, of speaking to others with the same kindness and respect we would wish for ourselves. The fourth and final fence is the commitment to abstain from idle chatter or frivolous talk, sambhapalapa. This is perhaps the most challenging practice in our modern world, which is saturated with noise and distraction. Idle chatter is speech that has no purpose, no meaning, and no benefit. It is the endless talk about trivialities, the pointless speculation, the mindless gossip, the chatter that simply fills silence and clutters the mind. While it may seem harmless, constant idle chatter has a subtly corrosive effect. It dissipates our mental energy, it keeps the mind in a state of agitation, and it distracts us from what is truly important in our lives. To practice this aspect of right speech is to learn to value silence. It doesn't mean becoming cold or aloof. It means choosing our words with care, speaking when we have something meaningful and beneficial to say, and being comfortable with what is often called noble silence. This is not an awkward, empty silence, but a rich, peaceful, and observant quietude. It allows space for our own minds to settle and for others to truly be heard. There is a powerful story that perfectly models the wisdom of right speech. One day, a man of high caste, a Brahmin, came to the Buddha and began to insult him with a torrent of abusive language. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had exhausted himself. Then he asked a simple question. "Brahmin," he said, "if you prepare an elaborate feast for a guest, but the guest politely declines to accept your offering, to whom does that feast then belong?" The Brahmin, surprised, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so. You have just offered me a feast of insults and anger. I decline to accept it. It remains with you." This story teaches a profound lesson. We do not have to internalize the verbal poisons that others offer us. We can simply let them remain with the sender. It also models a powerful, non-retaliatory response. Instead of meeting anger with anger, the Buddha met it with a calm, disarming wisdom that left the aggressor speechless. Before we speak, we can use this wisdom to apply a mental checklist, a triple filter test. The first question is it true? If it is not true, we should not say it. The second is it kind? If it is true but not kind, we must question our motivation for saying it. The third is it necessary or beneficial? If it is true and kind, but serves no useful purpose, perhaps it is better left unsaid in the spirit of noble silence. Practicing right speech, therefore, is far more than just avoiding what is wrong. It is also about actively cultivating what is right. Instead of falsehood, we speak the truth. Instead of division, we speak words that unite and praise. Instead of harshness, we speak words that are gentle, comforting, and encouraging. And instead of idle chatter, we engage in conversations that are meaningful, that explore wisdom, and that lead to deeper understanding. This is a profound practice of mindfulness in action. It requires us to create a tiny, precious gap of silence between the impulse to speak and the physical act of speaking. In that gap, we have a choice. In that gap, wisdom can arise. We can turn speech from a mindless, conditioned reaction into a conscious, compassionate, and creative act. It is a practice that will not only transform our relationships with others, but will also bring a deep and abiding peace to our own mind. As we build this foundation of ethical communication, ensuring the bridge we extend to the world is strong and beautiful, the path naturally calls us to look at our other actions, for our physical deeds often speak even louder than our words. This leads us directly to the next crucial element in our training of ethical conduct, the practice of right action. Having laid the foundation of ethical communication through the practice of right speech, the path now guides us to embody our intentions in the world through our physical deeds. Words are powerful, but actions are the tangible proof of our inner transformation. It is in our actions that our ethics become visible, that our compassion takes form, and that our commitment to the path is truly tested. This is the domain of right action, or samakamanta. It is the practice of aligning every act of our body with the wisdom of right view and the purity of right intention. At its heart, right action is guided by a single, luminous principle, ahimsa, the principle of harmlessness. It is the resolve to move through the world in a way that creates safety, trust, and well-being for all life around us. Like its predecessor, right speech, the practice of right action is most clearly defined by three fundamental commitments, three kinds of harmful actions that we consciously choose to abstain from. These form the core of a moral life, creating a stable ground for the mind to find peace. The first and most foundational of these is the commitment to abstain from taking life, panatipata. This is the vow to refrain from intentionally destroying any living, breathing being. This principle begins with human life, but extends outwards to encompass all creatures, from the largest mammals to the smallest insects. This is not a rigid commandment handed down from on high, but an ethical stance born from profound empathy. It arises from the direct and simple recognition that all beings, just like ourselves, cherish their existence. All beings fear, pain, and seek to avoid death. When we see this shared, fundamental desire for life in the eyes of another creature, the intention to harm it naturally begins to dissolve. To practice this aspect of right action is to cultivate a heart of reverence for life. It challenges us to look at our relationship with the other inhabitants of this planetho. We treat the spider in our room, the birds in our garden, the animals that are raised for our consumption. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone must adopt an identical lifestyle, but it demands that we honestly and mindfully consider the consequences of our choices, striving always to minimize the harm we cause. It is the practice of becoming a guardian of life, not a destroyer of it. The second pillar of right action is the commitment to abstain from taking what is not given, adinadana. This is the practice of not stealing. Again, this principle extends far beyond the simple act of robbing a house or shoplifting. It encompasses any act of taking something that has not been freely and willingly offered. This includes cheating on our taxes, deceiving a business partner, using company resources for extensive personal use, failing to pay back a debt, or infringing on intellectual property through digital piracy. It means not exploiting the generosity of others, or taking advantage of a loophole to gain something unfairly. At its core, this is a practice of profound honesty and respect. It acknowledges the effort, time, and resources that others have invested. By abstaining from taking what is not ours, we cultivate a mind of contentment. We learn to appreciate what we have, rather than constantly looking for ways to acquire what belongs to others. This builds a powerful foundation of integrity. When we are completely honest in our dealings, we have nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Our conscience is clear, and a clear conscience is a prerequisite for a peaceful mind. The third pillar is the commitment to abstain from sexual misconduct, kamasumikachara. This is the practice of bringing our powerful sexual energy into the domain of ethics and compassion. The Buddhist path is not puritanical or anti-sexuality. It simply asks that we conduct our intimate lives in a way that is founded on kindness, respect, and harmlessness. Sexual misconduct refers to any sexual act that causes suffering to ourselves or to others. This includes adultery, which betrays a sacred trust and causes deep pain to a partner. It includes any form of sexual exploitation or coercion, where one person uses their power or position to take advantage of another. It includes any act that is deceitful or that disrespects the dignity and autonomy of the other person. To practice right action in our intimate lives means to cultivate relationships based on mutual respect, clear communication, and genuine care. It means ensuring that our sexuality is an expression of connection and affection, not a selfish pursuit of pleasure that leaves a wake of emotional harm. It is about honoring our commitments and treating our partners with the tenderness and fidelity that we ourselves would wish to receive. The transformative power of shifting from wrong action to right action is dramatically illustrated in the life of one of history's greatest rulers, the Indian Emperor Ashoka, who reigned in the 3rd century BCE. In his early years, Ashoka was a ruthless and ambitious conqueror, known as Ashoka the Fierce. Driven by a desire to expand his empire, he waged a brutal war against the independent kingdom of Kalinga. The war was a horrific success. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed in the fighting, and many more were captured and deported. But when Ashoka walked through the capital of the conquered land, he was confronted with the unimaginable scale of the suffering he had caused. He saw the fields littered with bodies. He heard the wails of those who had lost their families and homes. He was overcome by a profound and shattering remorse. This direct confrontation with the consequences of his own actions triggered a complete spiritual transformation. Ashoka renounced violence and embraced the teachings of the Buddha. He completely changed the nature of his reign, replacing the sword with the Dharma. He, who was once a destroyer of life, became its protector. He built hospitals for both humans and animals. He planted trees and dug wells for travelers. He renounced military conquest and instead sent out emissaries of peace to spread a message of tolerance and ethical conduct. Ashoka's life stands as a powerful testament that no matter how harmful our past actions have been, a change of heart is always possible. His story is the ultimate embodiment of the shift from a life of wrong action to a life of right action. This illustrates that the path is not merely about what we avoid, but what we actively cultivate. The positive dimension of right action is a joyful expression of a purified heart. The true opposite of killing is not just refraining from harm, but the active practice of protecting and nurturing life. The opposite of stealing is the joyful practice of generosity, or dana. This means giving freely of our resources, our time, and our energy without expecting anything in return. It is the joy of sharing and supporting others. And the opposite of sexual misconduct is the cultivation of deep love, fidelity, respect, and unwavering commitment within our relationships. Ultimately, our actions are simply our mind made visible. An action performed with a mind of greed is fundamentally different from one performed with a mind of generosity. We can see it, and others can feel it. When we steal something, we reinforce the mental habit of grasping. When we give something freely, we reinforce the mental habit of letting go. When we lash out in anger, we strengthen the neural pathways of hatred. When we act with gentle kindness, we strengthen the neural pathways of compassion. Right action is therefore not just a moral code. It is a direct form of mind training. It is a feedback loop where our wholesome deeds help to create a more wholesome mind, which in turn leads to even more wholesome deeds. In essence, right action is the commitment to make our physical presence in this world a source of safety and peace. It is the practice of living in such a way that other beings, our families, our neighbors, our colleagues, and the creatures who share our environment have no reason to fear us. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing our hands have been used to help, not to harm, to give, not to take, to protect, not to destroy. It is compassion in motion. Having established this ethical foundation for our speech and our general conduct, the path now guides us to apply this same lens of harmlessness to the area where we invest so much of our daily energy, our work. For our life to be truly integrated, our livelihood must also be a practice of right action. This leads us to the final element in the training of ethical conduct, the practice of right livelihood. Having aligned our words with the truth through right speech and our deeds with compassion through right action, the path of ethical conduct, or sila, now guides us to its culminating point, the realm of our work. For most of us, our profession is where we invest the majority of our waking hours, our creative energy, and our mental focus. It is the primary way we sustain ourselves and interact with the broader society. To live a life of true integrity, it is essential that this vast and influential part of our existence is also brought into harmony with our deepest values. This is the practice of right livelihood, or sema ajiva, the final pillar in the training of an ethical life. It is the art of earning a living in a way that is honorable, honest, and harmless. The Buddha understood that the way we earn our living has a profound impact on our state of mind. If our work requires us to harm others, to deceive, or to compromise our principles, it will inevitably create inner conflict, guilt, and agitation, making it impossible to find the deep peace that the path promises. Therefore, he first defined right livelihood by advising his followers to avoid certain professions that are fundamentally based on causing harm. He specifically mentioned 5 trades to be avoided: trading in weapons, trading in living beings, which includes slavery and raising animals for slaughter, trading in meat, trading in intoxicants, and trading in poisons. The principle behind this advice is clear and timeless. To trade in weapons is to profit from conflict and violence. To trade in living beings or meat is to have one's financial well-being depend directly upon the suffering and death of other creatures. To trade in intoxicants like alcohol or drugs is to profit from that which clouds the mind, the very instrument we need to achieve liberation. And to trade in poisons is to profit from that which destroys life. The underlying wisdom is that we should not build our own survival on a foundation that causes direct harm, suffering, or delusion for others. To do so is to create a deep and troubling contradiction in our own heart, attempting to cultivate peace internally while promoting harm externally. While this list provides a clear ethical boundary, the practice of right livelihood in our complex modern world goes far beyond avoiding these 5 specific trades. It invites us to engage in a deep and honest inquiry into the nature of our own work. It is less about a specific job title and more about the spirit and impact of our labor. We are encouraged to ask ourselves difficult questions. Does my work exploit other people, especially those in vulnerable positions? Does my company's business model depend on fueling greed, addiction, or materialism? Does my work contribute to the degradation of our natural environment? Is the service I provide or the product I create genuinely beneficial to society, or does it, in some subtle way, add to the world's suffering? These questions are not meant to induce guilt, but to awaken a sense of profound personal responsibility. They guide us to see our work not just as a means to a paycheck, but as a significant part of our spiritual practice. The essence of right livelihood is perhaps best captured not by what we do, but by how we do it. Imagine 2 carpenters, both tasked with building a simple table. The first carpenter's mind is filled with agitation. He thinks only of the payment. He resents the demands of the client and feels bored by the work itself. As he works, his primary motivation is to finish as quickly as possible. He cuts corners on the joinery, uses cheaper materials where they won't be seen, and his movements are rushed and careless. For him, the work is a burden, a means to an end. The resulting table may look fine from a distance, but it is weak and will not endure. Now, imagine the second carpenter. She approaches the wood with respect. Her mind is calm and focused on the task at hand. She finds a quiet joy in the scent of the sawdust, the feel of the plane in her hand, the precision of a perfectly cut joint. Her motivation is not just the payment, but a genuine desire to create something that is beautiful, functional, and strong. She is not rushing to finish, but is fully present in the process. For her, the work is a form of meditation, an expression of her integrity. The resulting table is a testament to her care, a thing of simple beauty and lasting strength. The job is the same, but the inner experience and the outer result are worlds apart. The second carpenter has transformed her livelihood into a spiritual practice. This shows that nearly any profession that is not inherently harmful can become a vehicle for right livelihood. The office, the workshop, the classroom, or the hospital can become our monastery. The daily challenges of our job become our practice ground. We practice honesty and integrity, refusing to cheat a client, deceive a customer, or fudge the numbers for our boss. We become a beacon of trustworthiness in a world that often rewards duplicity. We practice right speech in our meetings and emails, choosing words that are clear, kind, and unifying, and refusing to participate in the toxic currents of office gossip and backbiting. We practice right action by not stealing company time or resources, and by treating our colleagues, our employees, and our employers with fairness and respect, regardless of their position. Most importantly, we can bring the quality of mindfulness to our tasks. Whether we are writing computer code, driving a bus, cleaning a room, or preparing a meal, we can bring our full, undivided attention to the activity. This practice transforms even the most mundane task from a boring chore into an opportunity for focus and presence. It reduces the stress that comes from a mind that is always somewhere else, and it dramatically improves the quality of our work. Finally, we can cultivate a genuine spirit of service. We can make a conscious effort to see how our individual role, no matter how small it may seem, contributes to a larger whole that helps others. The person who cleans the hospital floors is contributing to healing. The person who codes a banking app is helping people manage their lives. The person who stocks grocery shelves is helping to feed families. Seeing our work through this lens of service infuses it with a profound sense of meaning and purpose, turning our job from a daily grind into a noble calling. Right livelihood, therefore, is the final and crucial step in weaving a seamless garment of ethical conduct. It closes the artificial gap we so often create between our spiritual life and our work life, allowing them to become one integrated whole. It is a path that empowers us to find dignity, purpose, and peace, not by escaping the world, but by engaging with it skillfully and compassionately. It ensures that the way we sustain our body does not poison our mind. With the cultivation of right livelihood, we complete the threefold training in Sila. We have now established a life of external harmony. Our speech is truthful and kind. Our actions are gentle and harmless. Our work is honest and beneficial. This foundation of ethical integrity is absolutely essential, for it brings a deep and powerful calm to the mind. A mind free from the inner agitation of guilt, remorse, and hypocrisy is a mind that is stable, clear, and serene. It is no longer fighting with itself or with the world. It is now ready. It is prepared to undertake the next great stage of the journey to turn its steady gaze inward and begin the profound and direct training of the mind itself. We now move from the outer world of conduct to the inner world of consciousness, beginning the training in mental discipline, or samadhi, with its energetic and vital first factor, right effort. Having established a life of external harmony through the practice of ethical conduct, or sila, we arrive at a new and crucial stage of the journey. Our outer world is now settled. Our conscience is calm, no longer agitated by guilt or remorse. We have created a stable platform from which we can now undertake the profound inner work of transforming the mind itself. This begins the third and final division of the Noble Eightfold Path, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. The first factor in this training, the one that provides the energy for all that follows, is right effort, or sama vayama. It is the engine that drives the ship forward, the lifeblood of our meditative practice. When we hear the word effort, our modern conditioning often conjures images of struggle, of gritting our teeth and pushing through pain, of a tense, white-knuckled striving. We think of no pain, no gain. But this is the very opposite of right effort. The Buddha's path is the middle way, and this applies as much to the energy we bring to it as to anything else. Right effort is not a grim battle against our own mind. It is a wise, joyful, and sustainable application of energy. It is the art of balanced striving. The quintessential story that teaches this principle is that of a monk named Sona Kolivisa. Sona had been raised in a wealthy and delicate household, and his feet were said to be so soft that hair grew on his soles. After becoming a monk, he was filled with a fierce determination to attain enlightenment quickly. He practiced walking meditation with such extreme and relentless intensity that the path became slick with the blood from his torn and blistered feet. Yet, despite his heroic, painful efforts, his mind was no closer to peace. He was filled with frustration and despair, and he began to think of giving up and returning to his comfortable life. The Buddha, knowing what was in Sona's mind, came to him and asked a gentle question. Sona, I hear that before you became a monk, you were a skilled player of the lute. Is this true? Sona confirmed that it was. The Buddha then continued, Tell me, Sona, what happens if you tune the strings of your lute too tightly? Sona replied, Venerable sir, if the strings are too tight, they will snap. And what happens? The Buddha asked, if the strings are too loose? If they are too loose, Sona said, they will not make a proper sound. The Buddha then offered the crucial teaching, and what if the strings are tuned just right, not too tight, and not too loose? Sona answered, Then sir, the lute will produce a beautiful and harmonious sound. The Buddha smiled. So it is, Sona, with the spiritual path. If your effort is too tense, it leads to restlessness and anxiety. If your effort is too slack, it leads to laziness and complacency. Only when your energy is balanced, tuned just right, can your practice produce the beautiful music of wisdom and peace. Right effort, then, is this perfectly tuned string. It is the joyful, persistent energy that is free from the strain of anxiety and the drag of lethargy. But how do we apply this balanced energy? The Buddha provided a brilliantly clear and practical framework for this, a four-part strategy for skillfully managing our inner world. This is known as the four great efforts, and they are the four primary duties of a wise gardener of the mind. The first duty is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the most skillful and proactive of the four efforts. It is the practice of being a vigilant gatekeeper at the doors of our senses. An unwholesome state is any thought, emotion, or intention rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion states, like anger, jealousy, lust, anxiety, or pride. We know from experience that certain sights, sounds, or situations can act as triggers for these states. The effort of prevention means that when we encounter a potential trigger, we apply mindfulness immediately to prevent the negative state from ever taking root. For example, if someone speaks to us in a condescending tone, we can see the spark of anger before it ignites into a flame. In that moment, we can consciously relax our body, take a deep breath, and perhaps bring to mind a thought of compassion for that person, recognizing they may be suffering themselves. We have guarded the gate, and the unwholesome state of anger was never allowed to enter the city of the mind. This is the highest form of mental hygiene. The second duty is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. This is for when the gatekeeper has nodded off, when we have been caught off guard, and a negative state like anger or strong desire is already present in the mind. Our conditioned reflex is usually one of two things: to suppress it. I shouldn't be angry, which is like pushing a beach ball underwater. It will only pop up with more force later. Or to indulge it, letting it sweep us away in a torrent of stories and justifications. Right effort offers a middle path. We first acknowledge the state without judgment. Anger is present. We don't condemn ourselves for it. We then investigate it with curiosity, observing how it feels in the body. Finally, we gently withdraw our attention from it. We let it be, without feeding it with more stories. An unwholesome state is like a fire. If we stop throwing logs on it, it will eventually burn itself out. We can also apply a specific antidote, such as actively cultivating thoughts of loving kindness to counteract the anger, or contemplating the impermanent and unsatisfying nature of a desired object to counteract craving. This is the skillful weeding of the garden. The third duty is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful and creative aspect of the practice. It is not enough just to avoid the negative. We must also actively plant the seeds of the positive. A wholesome state is any state of mind rooted in generosity, kindness, and wisdom states like patience, gratitude, concentration, compassion, and joy. This effort means we don't just wait for these states to appear by chance. We actively create the conditions for them to grow. We set aside time for formal meditation practice to develop concentration and calm. We take a few moments in the morning to reflect on what we are grateful for. We read texts that inspire us. We deliberately perform an act of kindness for someone. We go for a walk in nature to cultivate a sense of awe and peace. This is the proactive planting of beautiful flowers in our mental garden, making the mind a brighter, more beautiful, and more pleasant place to inhabit. The fourth and final duty is the effort to maintain and perfect wholesome states that have already arisen. It is one thing to have a fleeting moment of peace or joy, but it is another thing to sustain it. Our minds are often like leaky buckets. A positive state arises, but it is quickly lost to distraction or a new wave of thought. This fourth effort is the practice of nurturing the wholesome states we have cultivated. When a feeling of calm arises during meditation, we learn to rest in it, to savor it gently, to protect it. When a feeling of genuine kindness for someone arises, we dwell with it, allowing it to deepen and expand. By doing so, we are strengthening these positive neural pathways. We are allowing the wholesome states to become more stable, more resilient, and more readily accessible. Over time, they cease to be rare visitors and become abiding residents of our mind. This is the careful tending of the young plants, ensuring they grow strong and healthy. These four great efforts, practiced with the balanced energy of Sona's lute string, form a complete strategy for mental cultivation. They teach us that transforming the mind is not a passive process, nor is it a violent struggle. It is a gentle, intelligent, and persistent skill. The effort in right effort is not the force of a battering ram, but the steady, quiet, and relentless pressure of water that can, over time, smooth the hardest stone. It is the patient, consistent effort of the gardener who shows up every day to tend to their plot, knowing that the results will come not from one day of frantic work, but from a season of steady, loving care. With this understanding, right effort becomes the animating principle of our inner life. It is the wise energy that says yes to the wholesome and no to the unwholesome. It is the courage to abandon what harms us and the enthusiasm to cultivate what helps us. It provides a clear and practical answer to the question, what should I do with my mind? Now that we have this framework, now that we understand the balanced energy required and the four key tasks of the inner gardener, a final, practical question comes into focus. What is the specific tool we use to accomplish all of this? How do we know when to prevent, when to abandon, when to cultivate, and when to maintain? To be a skillful gardener, you need to be able to see the garden clearly. The life-giving energy of right effort must be guided by a precise, unwavering, and intimate awareness of what is happening in the present moment. This leads us directly to the very heart of the Buddha's path of meditation, the indispensable seventh factor, the practice of right mindfulness. If the training in ethical conduct, or sila, builds a sturdy and peaceful home for our practice, and right effort provides the warm, life-giving energy within it, then right mindfulness, or samasati, is the clear, open window through which the light of truth can enter. It is the seventh factor of the path and the very heart of the training in mental discipline. It is the master tool that makes the four great efforts possible, the steady hand that allows the gardener to distinguish between a weed and a flower. Without mindfulness, our efforts are blind. With mindfulness, our entire life becomes a path to awakening. At its core, right mindfulness is the art of being fully present for our own life. The most widely used definition describes it as the capacity to pay attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Each part of this definition is a profound teaching in itself. To pay attention on purpose means that mindfulness is not a passive, dreamy state. It is an active and intentional directing of our awareness. We are choosing to show up for our experience, and we are choosing to show up for it in the present moment. This is a radical departure from our mind's habitual state. Our minds are time-traveling machines. We spend countless hours lost in the pace replaying old conversations, nursing ancient grievances, basking in the fading glow of past glories, or we project ourselves into the future worrying about what might happen, rehearsing conversations that may never occur, fantasizing about a time when all our problems will be solved. The past is a memory. It is gone. The future is an imagination. It has not yet arrived. The only place where life is actually happening is right here, right now, in this present moment. Mindfulness is the practice of returning home to this moment, again and again. The final and most crucial part of the definition is to be present non-judgmentally. This is perhaps the greatest challenge and the greatest gift of the practice. Our minds are relentless labeling machines. The moment a sensation, a thought, or a feeling appears, we instantly categorize it: good, bad, right, wrong, pleasant, unpleasant. We like this, we don't like that. This constant judgment is the voice of our craving, our tanha, and it adds a thick layer of suffering to our raw experience. Non-judgmental awareness is a radical act of kindness. It is the willingness to allow our experience to be exactly as it is, without needing to fix it, change it, or condemn it. It is a spacious, gentle, and accepting presence that simply says, "This is what is happening right now." This quality of non-judgmental attention is what allows us to see things clearly without the distortions of our own preferences. But where do we practice this? The Buddha laid out a complete and systematic training ground for mindfulness, a comprehensive curriculum for exploring our own being. This is known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first foundation, and the most common starting point, is mindfulness of the body, kayanupassana. The body is our most faithful anchor to the present moment. It is never in the past or the future. It is always right here. We can bring mindful attention to the simple, rhythmic sensation of the breath flowing in and out. The breath becomes a home base, a place to return to when the mind wanders. We can also be mindful of our body's posture, the feeling of our feet on the floor as we stand, the contact of our body with the chair as we sit. We can practice mindful walking, feeling each step, or mindful eating, truly tasting each bite. By grounding our awareness in the body, we find a powerful antidote to the mind's tendency to get lost in thought. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, Vedananupassana. This does not refer to complex emotions like love or anger, but to the raw, immediate tone of any experience. Every moment can be categorized as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When we drink a cup of tea, there is a pleasant feeling. When we have a headache, there is an unpleasant feeling. When we are just sitting, there might be a neutral feeling. The practice is to simply notice these feeling tones as they arise and pass away without getting swept up in them. We see the pleasant feeling, and instead of clinging to it and demanding more, we just note pleasant. We see the unpleasant feeling, and instead of resisting it and pushing it away, we just note unpleasant. By doing this, we begin to interrupt the chain reaction of craving. we see that these feeling tones are impermanent, like weather passing through the sky, and we don't have to be slaves to them. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind, or consciousness, cittanupassana. Here, we turn our awareness back onto the mind itself. We learn to recognize its qualities from moment to moment, just like observing the weather. Is the mind cloudy with sleepiness? Is it stormy with anger? Is it bright and clear with focus? Is there greed present? Is there compassion present? We are not judging these states. We are not identifying with them. We are not the anger. We are the awareness that sees the anger. This practice creates a profound sense of inner space and freedom. We begin to see our thoughts and emotions not as absolute truths or as who we are, but as transient mental events that arise and pass away. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, or mental objects, dhammanupassana. This is where mindfulness and wisdom become deeply integrated. We begin to observe our experience through the clarifying frameworks of the Buddha's teachings. For example, when we feel stuck or agitated, we can mindfully investigate, which of the 5 hindrances is present right now? Is this restlessness? Is this doubt? Or we can look at a moment of experience and see the 5 aggregates form: feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness at play, realizing that there is no solid me here, only these interconnected and impersonal processes. This is the practice of seeing the truth of the teachings come to life in our own direct experience. There is a simple story the Buddha told about 2 acrobats. A master acrobat and his young apprentice were to perform a dangerous high wire act. The master said to the boy, "Now, my boy, I will look after you, and you will look after me, so that we don't fall and get hurt." But the young apprentice wisely replied, "No, master, that will not do. I will look after myself, and you will look after yourself. In that way, we will surely look after each other and be safe." The Buddha explained that this is how the practice of mindfulness works. When we look after ourselves by being mindfully aware of our own body, feelings, and mind, we protect ourselves from acting on greed, hatred, and delusion. In protecting ourselves from these unwholesome states, we automatically protect others from the harm of our words and actions. And when we practice with compassion and harmlessness towards others, we are in turn protecting ourselves from regret and creating a safer world to live in. Self-awareness and compassion are 2 sides of the same coin, but it all begins with the courage to look within. This is why mindfulness is not just a technique to be practiced on a meditation cushion for 20 minutes a day. It is a way of being that we can cultivate in every moment. When you are washing the dishes, you can be lost in thought about your worries, or you can be fully present, feeling the warmth of the water, seeing the sparkle of the soap bubbles, hearing the sound of the plates. In the second case, washing the dishes becomes a meditation. When you are listening to a friend, you can be half listening while planning what you will say next, or you can offer them the profound gift of your full, undivided, mindful attention. Mindfulness infuses our ordinary lives with a quality of sacredness. Right mindfulness, therefore, is the skill of waking up to our own lives. It is the steady, compassionate light that we shine into the dark corners of our own hearts and mind. It is the tool that allows right effort to be wise and effective. It is the foundation for seeing things as they truly are, and this clear seeing is the doorway to all freedom. As we apply the balanced energy of right effort through this clear lens of mindfulness, something magical begins to happen. The mind, which was once fragmented and scattered like autumn leaves in the wind, starts to settle down. The disparate threads of our attention begin to weave themselves together into a single, unified fabric. This steady, sustained, and unified awareness is the natural culmination of our meditative training. It is the eighth and final factor of the path, the profound state of right concentration. We have now traveled through 7 of the 8 factors of the Noble Path. With the foundation of an ethical life established through Sila, we began the inner training of the mind. We learned to apply the balanced, joyful energy of right effort, and we channeled that energy through the clear, non-judgmental lens of right mindfulness. As these 2 powerful faculties work together in harmony, something extraordinary and beautiful begins to occur. The mind, which was once a chaotic whirlwind of competing thoughts, fears, and desires, gradually begins to settle. The fragmented pieces of our attention, scattered across the past and future, start to gather and come home to the present moment. This natural process of unification, this serene gathering of the mind, is the 8th and final factor of the path. It is right concentration, or samma samadhi, the culmination of the entire training in mental discipline. Right concentration is not something that we can achieve through aggressive force. It is not a battle to be won. It is the beautiful and effortless fruit that grows on a healthy tree. When all the preceding 7 factors are cultivated, right concentration arises naturally. An ethical life calms the conscience. Right effort provides the steady energy, and right mindfulness sustains the attention. When these conditions are met, the mind does what it is naturally inclined to do. When it is no longer being disturbed, it comes to rest. It becomes unified, coherent, and still. Perhaps the most classic and beautiful analogy for this process is that of a lake. Our ordinary, everyday mind is like a lake whipped into a frenzy by strong winds. The winds are the 5 hindrances: sensory desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness, and doubt that constantly agitate the surface of our consciousness. The water is murky and clouded with the mud and silt of our underlying mental defilements. In such a state, it is impossible to see clearly. We cannot see the bottom of the lake, nor can we see a clear reflection of the sky above. Our perception of reality is distorted and obscure. The practice of the Eightfold Path is the systematic process of calming this lake. The training in ethical conduct, Sila, is like building a protective wall around the lake, shielding it from the harshest winds of guilt and remorse. The practice of right effort is the gentle but persistent work of not stirring up the water further. The practice of right mindfulness is the quality of patiently and quietly watching the lake, allowing the currents to slow and the silt to gradually settle. Right concentration is the final, magnificent result. It is the state of the lake on a perfectly calm day. The wind has ceased completely. The mud has settled to the bottom. The water is now perfectly still, clear, and transparent. In this state, the mind, like the water, becomes a flawless instrument of perception. It can reflect the sky above with perfect accuracy, and it allows us to see right down to the very bottom, to perceive the hidden nature of reality with profound clarity. A mind in a state of right concentration is the very opposite of our usual fragmented consciousness. Our normal mind is like the light from an ordinary household bulb, scattering its energy weakly in all directions. A concentrated mind is like a laser beam. All of its energy is gathered and focused into a single, powerful, and penetrating point. This state is not one of tension or strain. It is a state of supreme ease and relaxation, when all the inner chattering, all the pushing and pulling of desire and aversion has been stilled. The mind rests in its own natural unity, and this state is accompanied by a deep and nourishing peace. The Buddha gave a detailed map of the inner landscape of right concentration, describing a series of profound meditative states known as the jhanas. These are not goals to be grasped at, but rather natural stages of absorption that unfold as the mind becomes more and more unified. In the first jhana, the mind is secluded from the 5 hindrances, and a powerful sense of bliss and joy arises, born of this very seclusion. There is still some light thinking and evaluation present as the mind explores this new, delightful state. As the concentration deepens, we enter the second jhana. Here, all thinking ceases. The mind becomes completely tranquil internally, and an even deeper, more profound bliss and joy arise, a joy born not of seclusion, but of the mind's own powerful, unified concentration. It is a state of utter contentment. In the third jhana, the more ecstatic quality of joy begins to fade, and what remains is a more subtle, pervasive, and full-bodied bliss, accompanied by a powerful sense of equanimity. One is fully aware, abiding in a state of deep and peaceful satisfaction. Finally, in the fourth jhana, even this subtle bliss is let go of. All pleasure and pain, all joy and sorrow have been transcended. What remains is a state of pure, unshakable equanimity and pristine mindfulness. The mind is like a perfectly still, clear mountain, unmovable by any storm. It is a state of absolute peace. But what is the purpose of cultivating these profound states of peace? Right, concentration serves two vital purposes on the path. The first is that it provides a deep and legitimate source of happiness, here and now. The bliss and peace of a concentrated mind are far superior to any fleeting pleasure we can gain through the senses. When we experience this profound inner nourishment, our addiction to the volatile and unsatisfying pleasures of the world naturally begins to weaken. We are no longer so dependent on external conditions for our happiness. We have found a wellspring of well-being within ourselves. This gives us immense strength and confidence to continue on the path. The second and ultimate purpose of right concentration, however, is to prepare the mind for the work of insight, or vipassana. Concentration itself is not the final goal. The final goal is liberation, and liberation comes through wisdom, through seeing things as they truly are. The mind that has been sharpened and unified through right concentration is the perfect instrument for this investigation. The laser-like focus, the unwavering stability, and the profound stillness allow us to turn our attention towards the nature of our own experience and to see it with a clarity that was previously impossible. A scattered mind cannot see the subtle truths of existence. A concentrated mind can penetrate to the very core of reality. With this powerful instrument, we can now look at our own body, our own feelings, and our own thoughts, and see for ourselves the truth of the three marks of existence: that all things are impermanent, anicca, that clinging to them brings suffering, dukkha, and that they are empty of a solid, independent self, anatta. Thus, right concentration completes the noble Eightfold path. It is the beautiful and powerful culmination of a path that began with right view and has unfolded through every aspect of our lives. The 8 individual strands have been woven together to form a single, unbreakable cable that pulls us towards the shore of liberation. The instrument of our mind and heart has been perfectly tuned. The journey of preparation is now complete. The path has led us here to a mind that is calm, bright, unified, and powerful beyond measure. A new question now arises. What do we do with this magnificent, flawlessly polished instrument? The answer is simple. We use it to look. We use it to turn the full, penetrating power of our concentrated awareness inward, to investigate the deepest questions of existence, and to realize for ourselves the liberating truths that will put an end to all suffering. We have walked the path. Now it is time to see the view from its summit. We now transition from the study of the path itself to an exploration of the profound insights it reveals, the liberating wisdom of vipassana. Our first investigation will be into the most immediate and observable characteristic of all existence, the universal truth of impermanence. With the mind calmed, unified, and sharpened through the diligent practice of the noble Eightfold Path, we arrive at a new phase of the journey. The training of the path has provided us with a flawless instrument, a mind that is both powerful and precise. Now, we begin the work for which this instrument was forged, the work of insight, of vipassana. Vipassana means to see clearly, and it is the direct, unmediated perception of the true nature of reality. It is this clear seeing, this wisdom, that ultimately cuts the bonds of suffering and sets us free. We turn this powerful lens of the concentrated mind inward, and the first, most fundamental, and most inescapable characteristic of existence that we perceive is the truth of anicca, or impermanent. Anicca is the universal law of change. It is the simple but profound truth that all conditioned things, without any exception, are in a constant state of flux. Everything that comes into being is subject to transformation and will eventually pass away. Nothing lasts. This is the fundamental rhythm of the cosmos, from the life cycle of a distant star to the fleeting thought that just passed through your mind. On an intellectual level, we all know this. We see the seasons change, from the first green shoots of spring to the stark stillness of winter. We watch buildings weather and crumble, mountains erode, and coastlines shift. We see a flower bloom in breathtaking beauty, and we see it inevitably wilt and decay. This gross, external level of impermanence is easy to acknowledge. The practice of insight, however, invites us to bring this understanding home, to see it not as an abstract concept, but as the living texture of our own experience. We begin by observing our own body. The body we have today is not the same body we had as a child. It is not even the same body we had last year, or even last week. Billions of our cells have died and been replaced. Our hair grows, our nails grow, we get sick and we recover. We feel energetic and we feel tired. The body is not a static object. It is a dynamic process, a river of constant change. To see this directly is to begin to loosen our identification with the body as a solid, permanent me. But the most transformative insight into impermanence comes when we use the sharpened tool of mindfulness to observe the flow of our own mind. We sit in quiet observation and we watch our inner world. We notice a feeling of happiness arise. Perhaps it is brought on by a pleasant memory or a hopeful thought. It feels wonderful, and our immediate instinct is to grasp it, to hold on to it, to make it stay. But if we just watch, without interfering, we will see that the feeling crests like a wave, and then, inevitably, it begins to subside. It changes and dissolves, replaced by something else. Then a feeling of sadness may arise. It feels heavy and dark, and our instinct is to push it away, to resist it, to get rid of it. But again, if we simply allow it to be there, observing it with a kind and patient awareness, we will see that it too is impermanent. It shifts, it lightens, it passes away. No feeling has ever come to stay. They are all transient visitors. We do the same with our thoughts. We watch the screen of our mind and see thoughts appearing as if from nowhere. A worry about the future, a line from a song, an image of a person's face, a judgment about ourselves. They arise, linger for a moment, and then vanish. They are like clouds drifting across the vast, open sky of awareness. Our habit is to grab onto each cloud, to identify with it, to believe it is solid and important. But the practice of insight teaches us to rest as the sky, allowing the clouds to come and go without being disturbed by them. We see that we are not our thoughts. We are the space in which the thoughts appear. This ever-changing, flowing quality of reality is perfectly captured in the ancient image of a river. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." Why? Because the water that made up the river the first time has already flowed onto the sea. New water is constantly arriving. The riverbanks themselves are subtly eroding and changing. And even more profoundly, the person stepping into the river is not the same person. The cells in your body have changed. The thoughts in your mind are different. Your mood has shifted. Both the observer and the observed are in a constant state of flux. Life is this river. Our suffering arises because we try to build a dam. We try to stop the flow. We try to grasp a handful of water and are bewildered when it slips through our fingers. We want to freeze a single, perfect moment and make it last forever. This is a fight against the very nature of the universe, a struggle that we can never win and that only brings us tension, anxiety, and disappointment. The wisdom of impermanence is the wisdom of learning to let go of the dam and instead learning to swim. It is the art of moving with the changing currents of life, of dancing with its inevitable flow. To some, this relentless truth of impermanence might sound pessimistic or nihilistic. If nothing lasts, what is the point of anything? But this is a misunderstanding. When seen with wisdom, the truth of anicca is profoundly liberating and life-affirming. It is the key to a richer and more meaningful existence. Firstly, it teaches us to cherish the present moment. When we truly know that every moment is precious and unrepeatable, we learn to show up for it more fully. We listen more deeply to a loved one, knowing that this conversation will never happen in exactly the same way again. We savor the taste of our food, the beauty of a sunset, the feeling of the sun on our skin, with a heightened sense of appreciation, because we know it is all fleeting. Impermanence is what makes life precious. Secondly, the wisdom of impermanence is a profound source of comfort and resilience. When we are experiencing physical or emotional pain, the deep, gut-level understanding that this too shall pass is an incredible solace. It prevents us from falling into the trap of despair, the belief that our current suffering will last forever. It gives us the strength to endure difficult times with patience and grace, knowing that the storm will eventually pass and the sun will shine again. Thirdly, it cultivates a healthy non-attachment. When we see that success, fame, wealth, and praise are all temporary conditions, we are less likely to become arrogant when we have them and less devastated when we lose them. Likewise, when we see that failure, blame, and loss are also temporary, we are less afraid of them. Our inner sense of well-being becomes less dependent on the volatile ups and downs of external circumstances. We find a deeper, more stable equilibrium within. Finally, the contemplation of our own impermanence, the recognition of the fragile and finite nature of this human life, inspires a sense of spiritual urgency, a quality known as savega. It is the heartfelt realization that we have a rare and precious opportunity to practice, to awaken, and to free ourselves from suffering. It motivates us to not waste our lives on trivialities, but to apply ourselves to the path with diligence and joy. The direct seeing of anicca, therefore, is the first great cut of the sword of wisdom. It cuts through our delusion of permanence, the fantasy that we can find lasting security in a world where everything is fundamentally insecure. It reveals the universe not as a collection of static objects, but as a dynamic, vibrant, and interconnected dance of energy. When we see this truth clearly, when we truly understand that everything we might cling to, our body, our possessions, our relationships, our feelings, our very thoughts is like writing on water, a profound and life-altering question naturally arises. If we build the entire project of our happiness on this constantly shifting, unstable ground, what kind of happiness can that possibly be? If we seek ultimate satisfaction in things that are by their very nature bound to fade, what is the inevitable outcome of that search? This powerful insight into impermanence forces us to look more deeply at the nature of our experience, leading us directly to the second great mark of existence, the universal characteristic of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. Having used the clear and steady lens of the concentrated mind to perceive the universal truth of impermanence, or anicca, we are left standing on new ground. We have seen, with undeniable clarity, that every aspect of our experience, from the world outside us to the thoughts and feelings within us, is a ceaseless and unstoppable flow of change. Nothing is solid, nothing is permanent. This is no longer a philosophical concept, it is a directly perceived reality. From this profound insight, a second, even more critical question naturally arises. What is the inevitable result of seeking lasting shelter, lasting happiness, and lasting security in that which is fundamentally and unalterably transient? The answer to this question is the second mark of existence, the truth of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. When we first encountered the term dukkha in the first noble truth, it was presented as the diagnosis of our condition, the symptom of our disease. It was the pain, the stress, the grief, and the subtle anxiety of a life caught in the cycles of craving. Here, as the second mark of existence, we see dukkha from a much deeper perspective. It is not just a symptom of our personal ignorance. It is an inherent characteristic of all conditioned phenomena when they are grasped at. It is the unavoidable friction that arises when our deep-seated desire for permanence collides with the universal reality of impermanence. The mechanism is simple and relentless. As living beings, we are hardwired with a profound thirst for happiness and an aversion to pain. We want to feel safe, secure, and content. In our ignorance, we seek this lasting security in the conditioned world. We try to build our fortress of happiness out of things like our physical body, pleasant feelings, loving relationships, wealth, status, and achievements. We cling to these things, believing that if we can just get them and keep them, we will finally be safe from suffering. But as the insight into anicca has shown us, every single one of these things is like a sandcastle built at the water's edge. The body ages and gets sick, pleasant feelings fade, relationships change and end, fortunes are lost, and status is fleeting. We are trying to find permanence in the impermanent, trying to find security in the insecure, trying to find satisfaction in that which is, by its very nature, unable to provide lasting satisfaction. This fundamental mismatch between our deepest longing and the nature of reality is the essence of dukkha as a universal mark. With this new lens, we can now re-examine the three types of suffering we first met and see how they are all direct consequences of this clash with impermanence. The first type, dukkha, the ordinary suffering of pain, is the most obvious manifestation. The pain of sickness is the pain of a change in our body's health. The grief of losing a loved one is the pain of a profound change in our relational world. The anxiety of being fired from a job is the pain of a change in our financial security. In all these cases, we suffer because things have changed in a way that we do not want, revealing the fragile, impermanent nature of our health, our relationships, and our security. The second type, viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change, is the clearest possible illustration of anicca, leading directly to dukkha. This is the stress and disappointment inherent in the fact that our happy moments cannot last. We finally achieve a long-sought goal, and the joy is wonderful, but we can already feel it beginning to fade, replaced by a sense of what's next. We are on a perfect vacation, but the knowledge that it will end hangs in the back of our mind, casting a subtle shadow on our enjoyment. The suffering here is not in the happiness itself, but in our clinging to it, our futile resistance to its impermanent nature. Our very attempt to hold on to joy is what taints it with the anxiety of its inevitable departure. The third and most subtle type, Sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence, is the dukkha of being subject to the law of anicca itself. It is the background stress inherent in being a composite, dependent, and ever-changing phenomenon. Because every part of our beinga, body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness is unstable and in constant flux, there is no solid ground to stand on anywhere. There is a fundamental vulnerability, a baseline precariousness to our very existence. Even when nothing is overtly wrong and no specific pleasure is fading, this low-level hum of insecurity remains. It is the inherent unsatisfactoriness of a life lived out of sync with its own fundamental nature. Imagine a man who desires more than anything to build a magnificent, permanent home where he can live in safety and peace forever. He finds what appears to be a beautiful spot on a vast beach with a stunning view of the ocean. Wise advisors warn him, do not build here. The foundation is made of sand and it is constantly shifting. But the man is stubborn. He is captivated by the view and convinced of his own building skills. He ignores the advice and spends years of his life and all of his resources constructing his dream house. It is a masterpiece, strong and beautiful. For a while, on calm days, he is happy. But then, inevitably, the storms come. The high tides surge, the winds blow, and the very sand beneath the house begins to shift and wash away. Cracks appear in the magnificent walls. The foundation gives way, and eventually, the entire structure he invested his life in collapses into ruin. His heart is broken. Now, what was the true cause of his suffering? Was it the storm? Was it the tide? Or was it his own initial, misguided choice to build a permanent structure on a foundation that was, by its very nature, impermanent? The insight into dukkha is the realization that we are all this man. The house is the stable, happy life we try to construct. The sand is the impermanent nature of all conditioned things. Our suffering comes from the foundational error of our strategy. This realization is not a cause for despair. It is profoundly empowering. It completely changes our relationship with our own suffering. Ordinarily, when we suffer, our mind immediately looks for something or someone to blame. I am unhappy because my partner left me. I am angry because my boss criticized me. I am anxious because the economy is bad. We see the cause of our suffering as being purely external. This makes us a victim, powerless to do anything but wish for the world to change. But the wisdom of dukkha reveals a deeper truth. The suffering is not caused by the partner leaving, it is caused by our clinging to the impermanent state of the relationship. The suffering is not caused by the boss's criticism, it is caused by our clinging to a fixed and positive self-image. The suffering is not caused by the economy, it is caused by our clinging to a sense of permanent financial security. The source of the suffering is not out there, it is in here. It is our own clinging, our own resistance to the natural flow of life. And if the cause of suffering is internal, then the solution is also internal. We are no longer victims. We have the power to change our experience by learning to let go. Seeing dukkha as a universal mark of existence is therefore not a morbid or pessimistic act. It is an act of ultimate realism and compassion for ourselves. We finally stop demanding that life be something it can never be. We stop asking for permanent satisfaction from impermanent phenomena. We stop building our houses on the sand. This acceptance, this cessation of our war against reality, is the beginning of true peace. We have now seen with the eye of wisdom that all conditioned things are impermanent, or anicca. We have also seen that because they are impermanent, any attempt to cling to them as a source of lasting happiness will inevitably result in disappointment and unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha. This leads us now to the deepest, most personal, and most liberating investigation of all. We have examined the nature of the world we experience. Now, we must turn the lens of insight fully upon the one who is doing the experiencing. What about this I that feels pleasure and pain? What about this me that clings and suffers? If my body is constantly changing, my feelings are constantly changing, and my thoughts are constantly changing, where is the solid, permanent, unchanging self that I feel myself to be? Is this self also subject to the laws of anicca and dukkha? This inquiry, born from a clear seeing of the first two marks of existence, leads us directly to the third and most profound insight, the truth of not, self, or anatta. The journey of insight, or vipassana, has so far led us through two profound and transformative realizations. With the focused power of a concentrated mind, we have seen directly that all conditioned phenomena are marked by impermanence, or anicca. They arise, they change, and they cease in a relentless, unstoppable flow. Following from this, we have seen that any attempt to cling to these fleeting phenomena as a source of lasting happiness is doomed to fail, leading to a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha. This second insight reveals that our suffering is not a punishment or an accident, but the inherent friction that arises from our war against reality, our struggle to find solid ground where none exists. These two great insights now converge to illuminate the deepest and most personal territory of all, the very nature of the one who experiences this impermanence and this suffering. We are forced to ask the ultimate question: who is this I? If my body is constantly changing, my feelings are a fleeting parade, and my thoughts are like clouds passing in the sky, then where is the solid, continuous, and independent self that I have always believed myself to be? Is this core identity, this me, the one exception to the universal laws of anicca and dukkha? The investigation into this question leads us to the third and final mark of existence, the most radical, the most challenging, and the most profoundly liberating of the Buddha's teachings, the truth of not, self, or anatta. To investigate the self, the Buddha did not engage in abstract metaphysical speculation. He did what a master scientist would do. He looked closely at the available evidence, which is our own direct experience. He taught that what we conventionally call a person or a self can be analyzed and broken down into 5 distinct components known as the 5 aggregates or panyaka kanda. These 5 heaps are the exhaustive list of what we can possibly experience or identify with. The strategy of anatta is to examine each of these 5 components one by one and to ask 2 simple questions. Is it permanent? And if it is not permanent, can it truly be me or mine? The first aggregate is form, rupa. This is our physical body and the entire material world perceived through our senses. We look at this body. Is it permanent? Clearly not. It was born, it grows, it ages, it gets sick, and it will die. It is a constant process of change. Because it is impermanent and subject to decay and disease, is it a reliable source of lasting happiness? No, clinging to it as such is a source of dukkha. Therefore, the Buddha asks, can this changing, unreliable, and ultimately uncontrollable physical form be rightly regarded as, this is me, this is mine, this is myself? The honest answer, born from clear seeing, must be no. The second aggregate is feeling, vedana. This refers to the raw, immediate quality of any experience, which can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Are our feelings permanent? Absolutely not. They are the most volatile and rapidly changing of all our experiences. A moment of joy is replaced by neutrality, which is then replaced by irritation. They flash into existence and disappear in an instant. Because they are so fleeting, is clinging to them a source of true happiness? No, this is the very definition of the suffering of change. So, can this flickering, unreliable stream of pleasant and unpleasant sensations be the real, abiding me? The answer, again, must be no. The third aggregate is perception, sanya. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It is the part of the mind that says, blue, tree, dog, or that is my friend. Are our perceptions permanent? Number. Our perception of a person can change dramatically after a single conversation. Our perception of a political issue can evolve over time. Our perception is conditioned by our mood, our past experiences, and the information available to us. It is unstable and often mistaken. Therefore, can this fickle, error-prone faculty of labeling be the true me? The answer is no. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, sankhara. This is a broad category that includes all of our other volitional mental activities. Our thoughts, intentions, opinions, beliefs, prejudices, habits, desires, and aversions. It is the inner voice that is constantly chattering, planning, worrying, and judging. Is this stream of mental activity permanent? To even ask the question is to see the answer. It is the most chaotic and turbulent of all the aggregates, and is clinging to these thoughts a source of happiness. For anyone who has been trapped in a loop of anxious or obsessive thinking, the answer is a resounding no. This turbulent, conditioned stream of habits and opinions cannot be the stable, core essence of who we are. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, vijnana. This refers to the raw awareness that arises at each of the 6 sense doors: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. It is the simple fact of knowing an object. Is this consciousness a single, continuous, permanent entity, like a soul that looks out through the windows of the senses? The Buddha's insight was that it is not. Consciousness is also a conditioned process. I consciousness arises only when there is an I and a visible form. It is dependent on conditions. It arises and ceases from moment to moment with every new experience. It is not a monolithic I, but a flickering series of discrete moments of awareness. Therefore, can this dependent, flickering consciousness be the permanent, independent self? The answer is no. The classic illustration of this teaching is found in the story of the sage Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda. The king asked Nagasena his name, and the sage replied that while he was known as Nagasena, this was just a conventional designation, as there was no permanent person to be found. The king was baffled and challenged him, using the analogy of his own chariot. Nagasena then began to deconstruct the chariot. He asked the king, "Is the pole of the chariot the chariot?" "No," said the king. "Are the wheels the chariot?" "Number, is the axle the frame, or the reins the chariot?" "No," the king replied to each question. Nagasena then asked, "Is the chariot something else, separate from all of its parts?" "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then delivered the final insight. "Your Majesty, chariot is simply a convenient name, a label we give to a collection of parts when they are assembled in a particular way. It has no separate, inherent existence of its own." He then concluded, "In exactly the same way, Nagasena, or self, is just a conventional name for the temporary coming together of the five aggregates. There is no independent entity, no permanent soul, riding in the chariot of the mind-body. This insight into not-self, or anatta, is often frightening at first, as it seems to pull the rug out from under our entire existence. It is crucial, therefore, to understand what anatta does not mean. It does not mean that we do not exist. It means that we do not exist as a separate, permanent, independent entity. We exist as a dynamic, interconnected process. A river certainly exists, but it is a process of flowing, not a static object. A fire exists, but it is a process of burning. We too are a process. Anatta is not annihilation. It is a correction of a profound case of mistaken identity. Far from being a nihilistic or depressing truth, the realization of anatta is the gateway to the most profound freedom and relief. The ego, the sense of a separate self, is a tireless and demanding master. The work of maintaining ethos, defending its opinions, promoting its image, gratifying its desires, and protecting it from harness, the source of all our anxiety and stress. When we see through this illusion, we can finally put down this exhausting burden. If there is no solid self to defend, who is there to be insulted by another's words? Our vulnerability to praise and blame diminishes dramatically. If there is no permanent self to be threatened, what is the basis for our deep-seated fear of annihilation? If there is no separate self, who is the sole owner of our successes and failures, we can experience them with more humility and grace. There is less arrogance in success and less shame in failure. The prison of the ego, with its endless anxieties and insecurities, simply dissolves. Furthermore, this insight is the true foundation of boundless compassion. As long as we believe in a solid barrier between me and you, our compassion will always be limited. But when the illusion of the separate self is penetrated, we see our deep interconnection with all of life. We see that the suffering of others is not separate from our own. Their joy is not separate from our own. The walls come down, and the heart naturally opens to all beings. The three great insights of anicca, dukkha, and anatta are the pinnacle of liberating wisdom. They are not doctrines to be believed, but realities to be seen for oneself. The path has led us here, to the direct seeing that all experience is a fleeting, unreliable, and selfless process. This is the understanding that cuts the very root of craving and clinging. Now, with our view of reality fundamentally transformed, we can begin to explore how one lives in the world with this wisdom. How does this insight reshape our understanding of cause and effect, of our actions, and of our relationship to others? We will begin by revisiting the law of karma, but now from this new and selfless perspective. The journey into the heart of wisdom has led us to a breathtaking and perhaps disorienting vantage point. We have seen that all phenomena are impermanent and in constant flow, or anicca. We have seen that clinging to these fleeting experiences is the source of our deep unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha. And finally, we have turned the lens of insight upon the observer itself and discovered the most radical truth of all, that there is no solid, separate, unchanging entity, no permanent self, to be found the truth of anatta, or not self. This is the pinnacle of liberating insight, but it also raises a profound and pressing question that can challenge our entire sense of moral order. If there is no self, then who is it that acts? And if there is no one who acts, who is it that experiences the results of those actions? How can we reconcile the selfless nature of reality with the law of karma, the principle of ethical cause and effect that underpins the entire path? This apparent paradox is not a contradiction in the teaching, but an invitation to deepen our understanding, to move from a conventional view of karma to a profound one that aligns with reality as it is. In our initial understanding, we tend to think of karma in a very personal way. We imagine a solid, continuous me who performs a good or bad action, and that same me will, at some point in the future, receive a corresponding reward or punishment. It becomes a kind of cosmic bookkeeping system for a persistent soul. But the insight into anatta reveals that this picture, while useful as a starting point, is ultimately a fiction. There is no permanent entity that travels from the moment of action to the moment of result. So how does it work? The Buddha asks us to look to nature for an analogy. Imagine planting a mango seed. Over time, with the right conditions, that seed will sprout, grow into a sapling, and eventually become a large, fruit-bearing tree. Now, is the mango fruit that you hold in your hand the same thing as the seed that was planted years ago? No, of course not. The seed ceased to exist for the sprout to appear. The sprout ceased to exist for the tree to grow. Yet, is the fruit completely different from and unrelated to the seed? Also, no. There is an undeniable and unbroken stream of causal continuity between them. The fruit is the natural, impersonal consequence of the seed. The information and potential contained within the seed have conditioned this final result. So it is with karma and the stream of consciousness. The collection of mind-body processes that performs an action is not the exact same collection that experiences the result. The person you are today is not identical to the person you were 10 years ago. Yet, you are the direct causal heir of that person's actions. Every intentional action, word, and thought creates a vibration, a ripple, a momentum in the stream of consciousness. It modifies the stream itself. Wholesome intentions condition the stream in the direction of clarity, peace, and happiness. Unwholesome intentions condition the stream in the direction of confusion, agitation, and suffering. Karma is not a system of external judgment. It is a natural law of momentum and consequence, internal to the process of consciousness itself. This is why the Buddha repeatedly emphasized that the heart of karma is intention, or cetana. It is intention, monks, that I call karma, he said. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. The intention is the seed. It is the mental factor that gives moral character to our actions. An accidental act has a very different karmic weight than a deliberate one. The physical deed is just the husk. The intention is the living germ within. When we generate an intention of ill will, we are not just planning to harm another. We are, in that very moment, introducing the poison of hatred into our own mind, conditioning it towards future states of anger and suffering. When we generate a genuine intention of generosity, we are, in that moment, infusing our mind stream with beauty and openness, conditioning it towards future states of contentment and joy. We are constantly programming our own future with the quality of our present intentions. This refined understanding does not, as some might fear, eliminate moral responsibility. On the contrary, it establishes it in the most profound way imaginable. Without the insight of anatta, one could try to evade responsibility. One could say, I am a different person now than the one who committed that harmful act, so it has nothing to do with me. But the process view of reality shows this to be false. You are the present moment expression of that continuity of cause and effect. You are not the same, but you are not other. The flame on a candle can be used to light another candle. Is the flame on the second candle the same as the flame on the first number? Is it a completely different and unrelated flame number? The second flame's existence is entirely dependent on and conditioned by the first. In the same way, the you of this moment is lit from the candle of the previous moment. We are fully responsible for the flame we are passing on. This understanding is incredibly empowering because we are a process, not a fixed entity. We are not eternally doomed by our past mistakes. Anatta means we are not chained to a sinful, unchanging soul. We are a flowing river, and we have the power, in this present moment, to change the quality of the water that flows from here. The past has created the conditions of the present, but the intentions we form in the present are creating the conditions for the future. Freedom is always available, right now, in the choice of our intention. This leads to the ultimate purpose of the path, which is not simply to accumulate good karma to ensure a pleasant future. The final goal is to step out of the entire cycle of karmic cause and effect altogether. How is this possible? As long as our actions are driven by the three poisons: greed, hatred, and the delusion of a separate self, they are karmic seeds that will bear fruit within the cycle of suffering, or samsara. They are binding actions. However, when an action is performed by a mind that is fully awakened, mind that is seen through the illusion of self, a mind completely free from greed and hatred, that action is radically different. It is a pure, spontaneous, and luminous response to the needs of the present moment. It is like planting a sterilized seed. It is a perfectly skillful action, but it leaves no karmic trace. It does not create a future result within the cycle of rebirth, because there is no clinging, no identification, and no self to claim the action as mine. The actions of an awakened being flow forth as expressions of wisdom and compassion, like the radiant light from the sun, without agenda or attachment. This is the ultimate freedom, the end of all binding karma. Revisiting karma through the lens of anatta transforms it from a simplistic system of reward and punishment for a self into a profound, impersonal, and dynamic law of nature. It reveals that our sense of self is not the actor, but is in fact a product of our past karmic actions and intentions. We are not a noun that performs actions. We are a verb, a process of continuous becoming, shaped by the quality of our will. This places the entire weight of our spiritual life and the key to our liberation squarely in this present moment. It makes the quality of our heart, the nature of our intention, the most important thing in the universe. Seeing this with such clarity, understanding that our intentions are the very seeds that create our world and shape the future of our own consciousness, we are naturally inspired to engage in the most skillful activity possible. We are moved to turn away from a purely analytical investigation of reality and to engage the heart in the active and joyful cultivation of the most beautiful and beneficial states of mind. If our mind is a garden and our intentions are the seeds, then let us become master gardeners. Let us dedicate ourselves to planting the seeds of boundless love, limitless compassion, and selfless joy. This leads us now to the great practices of the heart, beginning with the foundational cultivation of a truly beautiful mind, the radiant practice of metta, or loving kindness. Having journeyed through the profound and analytical insights of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, our perspective on reality is fundamentally altered. We have seen that the self is not a solid entity, but a selfless process, and that our present intentions are the powerful seeds that shape the future of this process. This realization does not lead to a cold, detached nihilism. Instead, it illuminates with dazzling clarity the supreme importance of cultivating wholesome states of mind. If our heart is a garden, wisdom has shown us the nature of the soil. Now we must consciously and joyfully begin to plant the most beautiful flowers. This begins the great practices of the heart, the cultivation of the 4 Brahmaviharas, or divine abidings. These are the sublime emotional tones of an awakened mind, and the foundation upon which they are all built is the radiant practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is the sincere, unconditional and boundless wish for all living beings to be happy and well. It is crucial to understand what metta is not. It is not the possessive, preferential, and often selfish attachment of romantic love. It is not the conditional affection we feel for only our friends and family. Metta is a universal, radiant goodwill, a warmth that extends outwards from the heart, without discrimination or agenda. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, and its close cousin, fear. A mind consumed by hatred is a tight, contracted, and painful place to live. A mind filled with metta is spacious, soft, and joyful. Metta is not a feeling we must passively wait for. It is a skill that can be deliberately trained, a muscle of the heart that can be strengthened through consistent practice. The practice of metta meditation is a beautiful technology of the heart, a systematic method for generating this wholesome quality. Traditionally, the cultivation unfolds in a series of stages, like the gentle widening of a circle of light. The journey begins in the most intimate and often the most difficult place, with oneself. This is the absolute, non-negotiable starting point. You cannot offer water to others from an empty well. If your heart is filled with self-criticism, self-loathing, or a sense of unworthiness, any love you try to extend to others will be strained, incomplete, or tainted by a need for validation. The practice is to sit quietly and offer wishes of kindness to yourself, often by repeating gentle phrases. You might silently repeat, "May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be happy and content. May I live with ease." Many people find this first step incredibly challenging. The inner critic arises with a torrent of objections. "I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough." The practice is to meet this resistance with the same gentle kindness, to see these critical thoughts as just more clouds passing in the sky of awareness, and to patiently, gently return to the phrases, "You are planting new seeds, and it takes time for them to sprout through the hard soil of old habits." Once some warmth and acceptance for yourself has been generated, you then expand the circle to a respected or beloved person. This is the easy part, meant to strengthen the feeling of metta. You bring to mind a dear friend, a cherished family member, or a respected teacher, someone for whom your heart naturally feels affection. Holding their image in your mind, you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. You allow your heart to offer this gift of goodwill freely, feeling the warmth of your connection to them. This is like adding kindling to the small flame of metta you started with yourself, allowing it to grow brighter and stronger. Next, the practice stretches the muscle of the heart. You bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see regularly, but have no strong feelings about one way or the other. The cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, a person you see on your daily commute. You hold this person in your mind and, with the same sincerity, you extend the wishes of loving kindness to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. This stage is crucial. It begins to break down the mind's habit of dividing the world into categories of important to me and not important to me. It helps us to recognize the shared humanity in strangers, to see that they, just like us and our loved ones, also wish to be happy and free from harm. It is a powerful step towards universalizing our goodwill. Now comes the most transformative and challenging stage, extending metta to a difficult person. You bring to mind someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you, or for whom you feel resentment or anger. With as much sincerity as you can muster, you try to offer them the same wishes. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. This can feel impossible. It is vital to understand that this is not an act of condoning their harmful actions. It is not about saying what they did was okay. It is a profound act of healing for your own heart. It is the recognition that holding on to hatred is a poison that you drink, hoping the other person will suffer. This practice is the act of putting down the poison for your own sake. It is the wisdom to see that this person's harmful actions are very likely born from their own deep suffering and confusion. To wish them happiness is to wish them the very thing that would cause them to cease being a source of harm. It is the ultimate act of freeing yourself from the chains of resentment that bind you to them. Finally, having worked through these specific categories, you allow the feeling of metta to become boundless. You radiate it outwards in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the right, to the left, above, and below. You extend it to all beings in your city, your country, and the entire world, to all humans, to all animals, to all beings in the sky, on the land, and in the water, to beings seen and unseen, large and small, near and far. You hold the entire world in your heart and saturate it with the single, powerful intention. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. The perfected state of metta is like the sun. The sun shines its radiant warmth down upon the earth without any discrimination. It shines on the beautiful rose garden and on the foul-smelling garbage dump. It shines on the virtuous saint and on the cruel criminal. The sun does not choose. It does not say, "I will only shine on the things I like." It simply, effortlessly, and endlessly radiates its life-giving energy. A heart fully developed in metta is like this. It radiates a constant, unconditional goodwill to all of existence, without preference, without prejudice, and without asking for anything in return. The practice of loving kindness is one of the most healing and beneficial practices on the entire path. The Buddha said that the benefits of developing metta are vast. It helps us to overcome anger and to sleep peacefully. It conquers fear and social anxiety as the world begins to feel like a friendlier place. It naturally improves all of our relationships because we become a kinder, more patient, and more pleasant person to be around. It is described as a divine abiding, a beautiful and heavenly state of mind that we can inhabit right here on earth. Metta is the foundational practice of the heart because it creates a bedrock of inner safety and warmth. It is the deliberate and courageous act of choosing love over fear, connection over separation, and kindness over anger. It is the most powerful seed of beauty and wholesomeness that we can plant in the garden of our mind. When our heart is established in this radiant goodwill, this sincere wish for all beings to be happy, it is then prepared to encounter the reality of the world with strength and grace. What happens then when this heart, filled with the warmth of metta, turns its gaze towards a being who is not happy, a being who is actively in pain? The generalized wish for happiness then transforms into something more specific, more urgent, and more engaged. This is the birth of the second divine abiding, the trembling of a brave heart in the face of suffering, the sublime practice of karuna or compassion. The journey into the heart's garden begins with the nurturing of metta, the radiant and unconditional wish for all beings to be happy. This practice softens the soil of the mind, creating a warm and welcoming ground of universal goodwill. But a garden is not a sealed-off paradise. It is part of a larger world, a world filled with both sunshine and storms. The practice of the heart must therefore equip us to meet the full spectrum of life's realities. What happens when the heart established in metta, the heart that wishes for happiness, turns its gaze upon the world and encounters its undeniable suffering? At that moment, metta undergoes a profound transformation. It becomes the second of the four divine abidings, the sublime and active state of karuna, or compassion. Karuna is often described as the trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing pain. It is the natural response of love when it comes face to face with suffering. It takes the generalized wish of metta, may you be happy, and transforms it into a specific, urgent, and engaged wish. May you be free from this suffering. It is not a passive state, but an active one. It is the ache in our own heart that mirrors the ache in another's and the deep aspiration to do something to alleviate it. However, true compassion is a very specific and often misunderstood quality. It is crucial to distinguish it from its counterfeits. The first counterfeit is pity. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, you poor, helpless thing. Your suffering makes me feel superior in my strength." It creates a sense of distance between the observer and the sufferer. Pity is rooted in the ego's need to feel separate and better than. The second, more subtle counterfeit is what we might call empathic distress or overwhelming grief. This is when we are so flooded by another's pain that we drown in it ourselves. We become anxious, distraught, and paralyzed. This state, while it may feel like compassion, is actually a form of self-centeredness. The focus shifts from the other person's suffering to our own painful reaction to their suffering. In this state, we are no use to anyone. True karuna is different. It stands on equal ground with the one who suffers. It feels with them, but it is not consumed by their pain. It maintains its own balance and strength, allowing it to offer genuine help and solace. It is wisdom and love combined. The Buddha described cruelty as the far enemy of compassion, for it is its obvious opposite. But he called pity the near enemy, because it looks and feels so much like compassion, yet it is a subtle corruption of the real thing. To cultivate karuna, we mindfully and courageously open ourselves to the reality of suffering. We can bring to mind a person or an animal that we know is in pain. We allow ourselves to connect with their struggle, and with a brave and tender heart, we can practice breathing in their suffering and breathing out thoughts of peace, healing, and relief. May your pain be eased. May you find the strength to bear this burden. May you be free from this affliction. It is the practice of being willing to stay present with pain, ours and others, without turning away in fear or aversion. Now, we must pivot to the other side of life's coin. What happens when the heart established in metta encounters a being who is not suffering, but who is joyful, successful, and prosperous? The response of a truly beautiful mind is the third divine abiding, mudita, or sympathetic joy. Mudita is the sincere, selfless, and celebratory joy in the happiness and good fortune of others. It is the direct antidote to the poisons of envy and jealousy. While karuna weeps with those who weep, mudita rejoices with those who rejoice. For many people, mudita can be the most difficult of these heart practices. It is often easier for our ego to feel compassion for someone who is less fortunate than it is to feel genuine joy for someone who achieves a success we ourselves have longed for. When a colleague gets the promotion we wanted, or a friend finds a happiness that eludes us, the conditioned mind's response is often a painful clenching of comparison and envy. This feeling of jealousy, or isa, is the far enemy of mudita. It comes from the ego's mistaken belief that happiness is a limited resource, that another person's gain is somehow our loss. To practice mudita is to challenge this fundamental error. It is to understand that joy is not a zero-sum game. The practice of mudita involves deliberately bringing to mind someone who is experiencing happiness. It could be a friend celebrating a wedding, a child playing with pure, uninhibited laughter, or even a stranger on the street with a radiant smile. We hold their image and their happiness in our mind, and we make a conscious effort to share in their joy. We say to ourselves, How wonderful for you. I am so happy that you are happy. May your joy and success continue and grow. We try to feel the lightness and celebration in our own heart, just as with karuna, mudita has a near enemy that we must watch out for. This is a kind of exhilaration or vicarious excitement that is subtly self-referential. For example, when our favorite sports team wins, the joy we feel is often more about our own identity being validated, my team won, than about a selfless joy for the players themselves. True mudita is completely selfless. It finds delight in another's happiness for their sake alone. Practicing mudita is a powerful way to expand our own capacity for happiness 1,000-fold. If we can only be happy when good things happen to us, our opportunities for joy are very limited. But if we can learn to genuinely rejoice in the happiness of every person we meet, our opportunities for joy become literally endless. Every smile we see, every piece of good news we hear, becomes a source of nourishment for our own heart. These two sublime qualities, compassion and sympathetic joy, are like the two wings of a great bird. A bird cannot fly with only one wing. A heart that cultivates only compassion for the world's suffering can easily become heavy, burdened, and burned out. It can lead to a feeling of hopelessness in the face of so much pain. On the other hand, a heart that cultivates only joy, while turning a blind eye to suffering, can become naive, disconnected, and shallow. To fly, we need both wings. Karuna keeps our heart open, grounded, and responsive to the real suffering of the world. Mudita keeps our heart light, resilient, and inspired by the real goodness and happiness that also exist. Together, they create a heart that is balanced, strong, and capable of engaging with the full, unvarnished truth of the human condition. Both karuna and mudita are also profound practices for realizing the truth of anatta on a deep, emotional level. When we feel true compassion, the rigid boundary between my suffering and your suffering begins to dissolve. The pain is just pain, and the heart moves to soothe it. When we feel true sympathetic joy, the barrier between my happiness and your happiness becomes porous. The joy is just joy, and the heart moves to celebrate it. Both of these practices systematically dismantle the fortress of the ego, which is built on the foundations of separation, comparison, and self-interest. They train the heart to recognize the profound truth of our interconnectedness, that the well-being of every other being is, in a very real sense, inseparable from our own. With these practices, we cultivate a heart that is truly alive and engaged. We are no longer passive observers of life, but active participants, sharing in its sorrows and its celebrations with an open and fearless spirit. But a final question remains. We have learned to meet pain with compassion and joy with celebration. But what about the things we cannot change? What about the intractable realities of life, like the finality of death, the success of an unjust person, or the simple fact that we cannot control the choices of our loved ones? How does a wise heart relate to those aspects of life that are beyond our power to influence? For this, we need the fourth and final, divine abiding, the quality that holds and balances all the others. We need the crown jewel of the heart's practice, the profound and unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. We have now walked through the radiant halls of the heart, cultivating the three great active virtues of the liberated mind. We have learned to meet all beings with metta, the boundless wish for them to be happy. We have learned to meet their suffering with karuna, the tender and active compassion that yearns to alleviate their pain. And we have learned to meet their success with mudita, the selfless and celebratory joy that delights in their good fortune. Together, these three qualities create a heart that is open, engaged, and deeply connected to the flow of life. But this noble triad, as powerful as it is incomplete. A heart that is only active can become exhausted. A love that is not grounded in wisdom can become a source of pain. To complete the architecture of a truly free and resilient heart, a fourth and final quality is needed. This is the guardian, the protector, and the crown jewel of the four divine abidings. It is the profound and unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is perhaps the most subtle and misunderstood of these four states. It is a state of profound mental balance, a serene and spacious impartiality that is not shaken by the ups and downs of life. It is the ability to remain centered in the face of the 8 worldly winds, praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. It is a stillness of heart that is born not of suppression, but of deep, penetrating wisdom. Because of this stillness, it is crucial to understand what equanimity is not. Its most dangerous counterfeit, its near enemy, is indifference. Indifference is a cold, callous, and withdrawn state. It is a closing down of the heart, a form of aversion that says, "I don't care, this doesn't affect me." It is a defense mechanism. Upekkha, by contrast, arises from a heart that is fully open and engaged. It cares deeply, but it is not thrown off balance by what it sees. Indifference is the heart turning to stone. Equanimity is the heart becoming as spacious as the sky, allowing all weather patterns to pass through without being affected. Upekkha is not a lack of feeling. It is the refusal to be commanded by our feelings. True equanimity is not an emotion in itself, but a state of being that is grounded in wisdom. It arises from the clear and direct seeing of 2 fundamental laws we have already explored. The first is the law of karma. Upekkha is the deep, visceral understanding that all beings are the owners of their own actions and the heirs of their own karmic inheritance. We can love someone, we can offer them advice, we can help them in countless ways, but we cannot walk their path for them. We cannot make their choices, nor can we save them from the consequences of those choices. This realization allows us to love unconditionally without becoming entangled in a codependent need to control or fix others. It helps us to release the immense burden of feeling responsible for the happiness of everyone around us. We can help, we can serve, but we do so with a peaceful recognition of the limits of our power. The second pillar of wisdom supporting equanimity is the direct seeing of anicca, or impermanence. Upekkha is the mind's peaceful surrender to the universal truth that everything is in flux. It understands the futility of clinging to pleasant experiences and warring against unpleasant ones. It allows pleasure to be felt without grasping for more, and it allows pain to be felt without resisting its presence. It is a profound trust in the flow of life, a release from the exhausting struggle to make reality conform to our preferences. A powerful image for the mind of equanimity is that of a great ancient mountain. The mountain sits in majestic stillness. In the course of a day, it experiences all kinds of weather. Fierce winds of criticism and blame may howl against its slopes. Torrential rains of loss and grief may wash over it. The scorching sun of success and praise may beat down upon it, and a gentle breeze of pleasure may caress its surface. The mountain does not cling to the sunshine, nor does it push away the storm. It allows all of these conditions to come and go, to play out upon its surface, while its own deep, core stillness remains completely undisturbed. A mind established in upekkha is like this mountain. The ever-changing winds of life can blow, but our inner peace remains unshaken. Upekkha is not just a state to be enjoyed for its own sake. It is the essential guardian that protects and perfects the other 3 divine abidings. It is what allows our compassion to be sustainable. Without the balance of equanimity, a heart that is constantly open to the world's suffering would quickly become overwhelmed and fall into a state of burnout or despair. Upekkha provides the strength to keep our heart open, to help where we can, but also the wisdom to accept the situations we cannot change. It is the understanding that allows a doctor to treat patients with immense compassion, day after day, without being emotionally destroyed by the sickness and death they witness. Equanimity also purifies our metta and mudita, ensuring they are truly boundless. It is the quality that helps us to extend loving kindness equally to a friend and to a stranger, removing the bias of personal preference and attachment. It is the quality that allows us to feel genuine, sympathetic joy for another's success, even when that success highlights our own perceived failures. Upekkha frees our love and joy from the subtle hooks of the ego, allowing them to become truly universal and unconditional. The cultivation of equanimity is therefore a more advanced practice, one that rests on the foundation of the other heart qualities and on deep insight. We can cultivate it through contemplation. When we feel anxious and worried about the choices of a loved one, we can bring to mind the reflection: this person is the owner of their own karma. Their happiness and suffering depend on their actions, not on my wishes for them. I can only love them and be there for them. This is not a cold thought. It is a thought of profound respect for their autonomy, and it frees our own heart from the torment of useless worry. When we are buffeted by gain and loss, we can reflect on impermanence, seeing both states as temporary visitors. In meditation, we can practice by resting our attention on the neutral feeling tone, learning to be at peace with the moments that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. We can expand our awareness to hold the entire world in our mind, with all its beauty and its horror, its joys and its sorrows, and meet it all with a single, vast, and allowing acceptance. Upekkha, then, is the serene, spacious, and wise quality that completes the liberated heart. It is the final achievement of our emotional training, allowing us to live in the world with courage, grace, and an unshakable peace. The four divine abidings, when cultivated together, create a mind that is the most beautiful place imaginable, a heart that is warm and loving like the sun, metta, tender and responsive to pain, karuna, celebratory and joyful in the face of happiness, mudita, and as stable and imperturbable as a great mountain, upekkha. This is the heart of an awakened being, a heart that has found a true and lasting refuge. Having now explored the path of practice in its entirety and the beautiful qualities of the heart it cultivates, our journey takes one final practical turn. Even for a diligent practitioner on this well-lit path, specific and predictable obstacles can still arise to cloud the mind. To walk the path skillfully, it is not enough to know the destination. We must also know the common pitfalls and roadblocks along the way. This leads us to a crucial investigation of the primary patterns of obstruction that hinder our progress, the 5 hindrances. We have now traveled the entire length of the Noble Eightfold Path, from the clarifying light of right view to the profound stillness of right concentration. We have explored the beautiful qualities of the liberated heart-loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. It can be tempting to imagine that with this complete map in hand, the journey to awakening will be a smooth and steady ascent. But the path is not a pristine highway. It is a trail cut through the dense and often wild jungle of the human mind. Even the most diligent traveler will encounter obstacles. The Buddha, with his characteristic honesty and precision, identified the 5 most common patterns of mental energy that obscure our clarity and hinder our progress. These are the 5 hindrances, or panyaka nivarana. It is essential to understand that these hindrances are not personal failings or sins. They are impersonal, conditioned forces that arise in every human mind. They are like clouds that temporarily block the sun. The Sunor mind's inherent clarity and radiance never diminished, but its light can be obscured. The practice is not to hate the clouds or to fight them, but to understand their nature so that we are no longer fooled by them, allowing them to naturally dissolve and reveal the clear sky that is always present. The first hindrance is sensory desire, kamachanda. This is the mind's powerful tendency to be pulled outwards, chasing after pleasant experiences through the five senses. When we sit to meditate, the mind, accustomed to constant stimulation, gets bored. It begins to wander, fantasizing about a delicious meal, planning a future vacation, replaying a pleasant memory, or getting lost in sexual imagery. In daily life, it is the compulsive urge to check our phone, to buy something new, to seek out the next entertaining distraction. When this hindrance is present, the mind is restless, scattered, and feels pulled out of the present moment. The antidote is twofold. One is to patiently and gently acknowledge the desire without judgment. Wanting, wanting. And then firmly but kindly return our attention to our object of meditation, like the breath. The other, deeper practice is to contemplate the impermanent and ultimately unsatisfying nature of sense pleasures. We see that the pleasure they provide is fleeting and often leaves us wanting more. This insight naturally lessens their power over us. The second hindrance is ill will or aversion, vyapada. This is the opposite of the first hindrance. It is the mind pushing away, resisting, and contracting. It can manifest as anger, hatred, resentment, frustration, irritation, or self-criticism. When we are meditating, it might arise as annoyance at a sound, frustration with our own inability to focus, or the replaying of an old argument, nursing a grievance. In daily life, it is the anger that flares up in traffic, the resentment we hold against a colleague, or the harsh judgment we direct towards ourselves. When ill will is present, the mind feels tight, hot, and constricted. It is a deeply painful state. The direct medicine for ill will is the cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. When anger arises, we can deliberately generate feelings of goodwill, wishing ourselves and others to be well. We can practice forgiveness, understanding that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison ourselves. Patience and a compassionate understanding of the suffering that underlies another's harmful actions can dissolve the hardness of anger, allowing the heart to soften and open once more. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor, thinamida. This is not just ordinary physical tiredness. It is a heavy, dull, and foggy state of mind. It is a mental sinking, a lack of energy and motivation. In meditation, the head may begin to nod, the posture slumps, and the mind becomes hazy and unfocused, as if sinking into a swamp. In daily life, it manifests as procrastination, lethargy, and a feeling of being unable to rouse oneself to do what is necessary. The mind feels heavy and half asleep. The antidote to this hindrance is the conscious arousal of energy. We can work with the body by changing our posture, standing up to practice, opening a window, or gently splashing cool water on our face. We can also work with the mind by turning our attention to an inspiring subject, such as the qualities of the Buddha or the immense privilege of having this human life and the opportunity to practice. Cultivating a sense of interest and curious inquiry in the object of meditation also invigorates the mind. It is about finding that just right application of right effort to counter the mind's tendency toward laxity. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry, uddhaka kukuku. This is the infamous monkey mind, the mind that cannot stay still. Restlessness is the frantic, agitated energy that jumps from one thought to the next without settling on anything. Worry is a specific form of this, a mind caught in anxious loops about the future or regrets about the past. When this hindrance is strong, the mind feels like a shaken jar of water buzzy, chaotic, and completely unable to be still. It is impossible to see anything clearly. The primary antidote here is the cultivation of calm and concentration. This requires patience. We don't fight the restless mind. We simply acknowledge its presence and gently, again and again and again, escort our attention back to a single, calming anchor, like the breath. Deep, slow, and conscious breathing can also have a profound effect on calming the body and mind. The practice of gratitude can also be a powerful antidote to worry, as it shifts the mind's focus from what is lacking or what might go wrong to the abundance that is already present. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt, vicakicca. This is not the healthy, investigative doubt that the Buddha encouraged, which is a key part of right view. This is a corrosive, cynical, and paralyzing doubt that undermines our confidence and sabotages our practice. It is the inner voice that whispers, "This will never work for me. Am I really capable of this? Was the Buddha even real? Maybe this is all a waste of time." This doubt creates a state of inner hesitation and indecision that prevents us from applying ourselves fully. When this hindrance is present, we feel stuck and disheartened. The antidote is multifaceted. We can seek clarification from a wise teacher or a trusted text. We can reflect on the progress we have made, no matter how small. Most powerfully, we can simply acknowledge the doubt as just another thought pattern, another cloud passing in the sky. We can label it doubting, and resolve to gently put it aside and continue with the practice, trusting that the only way to overcome the doubt is to see the results for ourselves through our own committed effort. While each hindrance has its specific antidotes, there is a universal, mindful approach that can be applied to all of them. It can be summarized in 4 steps. First, recognize. We clearly and non-judgmentally acknowledge which hindrance is present. Restlessness has arisen. Second, accept. We allow it to be there without fighting it. We make space for it. This simple act of acceptance releases the second layer of suffering, the suffering of judging ourselves for having the hindrance. Third, investigate. We look at it with a kind curiosity. What does this feel like in the body? What thoughts are coming with it? This transforms the hindrance from an enemy into an object of mindful inquiry. And fourth, non-identify. We see that this hindrance is an impersonal, conditioned mental state. It is not me or mine. It is not a flaw in my character. It is simply aversion arising or doubt arising. This depersonalization is the key to freedom. The hindrance loses its power when we stop taking it so personally. Understanding these 5 hindrances is an essential part of our practical toolkit. They are the primary challenges we will face in our inner work. By learning to see them not as personal failings but as universal and impersonal teachers, we can work with them skillfully, gently, and effectively. Each time we see a hindrance and are not carried away by it, our wisdom grows and our mind becomes stronger. When these 5 clouds are allowed to pass, the radiant, clear, and peaceful sun of the awakened mind naturally shines forth, ready and able to see reality as it truly is. We have now come to the end of our detailed exploration. We have journeyed through the great diagnosis of the 4 noble truths. We have walked the comprehensive landscape of the Eightfold Path. We have marveled at the profound insights into the nature of reality. We have learned to cultivate the beautiful qualities of the heart, and we have familiarized ourselves with the common obstacles on the way. The complete architecture of liberation has been laid out before us. All that remains is to take a final step back, to see this magnificent journey as a whole, and to reflect on how this timeless wisdom can be integrated into the very fabric of our modern lives, allowing us to walk in the world with a new and unshakable sense of freedom, purpose, and peace. Our long and deep journey together through the ancient and ever-present landscape of the heart and mind now draws to a close. We began with a familiar feeling, one that resonates through the core of our modern lives, the feeling of the architect standing in a perfect house that felt profoundly empty. We began with the quiet hum of anxiety in a silent room, the gnawing sense that even when we have everything, something vital is missing. From that place of dissatisfaction, we embarked on a path of discovery. We bravely followed the first steps of the Buddha, looking directly at this feeling and giving it a name, dukkha, the universal truth of unsatisfactoriness. We turned our gaze inward and found its source not in our circumstances, but in the relentless, thirsty clinging of our own minds, the fever of Tana. Then, in the midst of this stark diagnosis, a profound hope dawned. Nirodha, the truth that an end to this fever is possible, that a state of perfect peace and freedom is attainable. And finally, we were given the map, the complete and practical blueprint for the journey from suffering to peace, the noble Eightfold path. We learned to cultivate wisdom, to live an ethical life of harmlessness, and to train the mind through meditation. We explored the deep insights into the selfless and flowing nature of reality, and we learned to cultivate the boundless heart of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Let us return, for a final moment, to the architect. He stands in the same house. The light still falls through the same windows onto the same polished floors. From the outside, nothing has changed, but from the inside, everything is different. The house is no longer empty because its inhabitant is no longer empty. The silence is no longer filled with the hum of anxiety, but with the richness of presence. He has learned that peace is not a design to be imposed upon the world, but an inner space to be cultivated. He has discovered that the ultimate refuge is not built of concrete and glass, but of awareness and compassion. This is the final, essential message of this timeless path. Peace is not a destination we arrive at after a long and arduous struggle. It is not a perfect state of affairs where all our problems have been solved. It is a quality of mind, a way of being, a refuge that we can learn to access right now, in the midst of our imperfect lives. True and lasting happiness, we discover, is not a matter of successfully arranging the world to fit our desires. It is the far more profound and liberating art of training our heart to embrace the world as it is. It is the freedom that comes when we finally lay down our arms in our long war against reality. This vast and profound teaching does not ask you to become someone else. It invites you to finally, fully become yourself. It does not demand a grand gesture. The longest journey begins not with a leap, but with a single, simple step. The path to awakening begins with a single, conscious breath. It begins right now, in this moment, with the feeling of the air entering your body and the gentle release of it leaving your body. You are the architect of your own inner world. You have the blueprint. You have the tools. Begin.